Chapter 55. Die. Zhu Shi's eyes flashed with a cold light, and he laughed grimly. Suddenly, the flying sword turned into hundreds of millions of sword lights, blocking the sky and strangling Murongyu. Clang! 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 The flying sword's speed was really too fast. Even though Murongyu attacked with all his strength, it was too late to shake off the flying sword. In just a moment, Murongyu's body was cut dozens of times by the flying sword. It's over, Murongyu is dead for sure. Seeing countless flying swords constantly slashing Murongyu's body, the people watching the excitement nearby secretly sighed. But soon they discovered something that shocked them. Murongyu's body, which was constantly being cut by countless flying swords, actually emitted the sound of metal clashing. But this was not what surprised everyone. What shocked them was that, under Zhu Shi's attack, although Murongyu's clothes were cut into pieces, but there were no wounds on his body. Even the places that were cut by the flying swords only revealed a trace of white marks. A low-grade magic weapon of the revolving reflection stage was actually unable to injure Murongyu's body. Could it be that Murongyu's body has a high-grade magic weapon armor? Everyone was shocked, even Zhu Shi, who was directly involved, was so shocked that he forgot to attack for a moment. It should be known that half a month ago, he had unfortunately personally shot down a late Foundation establishment stage monster beast. It should be known that under the same stage, monsters of the same stage were much stronger than cultivators in terms of strength and physical strength. At that time, Zhu Shi relied on the low-grade magic weapon in his hand to twist the late Foundation establishment stage monster beast into pieces. But it was unable to injure Murongyu, who was only in the middle Foundation establishment stage. Only, they did not know that Murongyu's physical strength had already reached the high-grade magic weapon level. It was extremely terrifying. Want to injure his body? Unless it was a high-grade magic weapon. As for low-grade magic weapons, even if Murongyu stood there and looked at them, they would not be able to injure him. Of course, if it was a very powerful almighty, not to mention magic weapons, even a finger could easily stab Murongyu to death. But it was clear that only Zhu Shi, who was in the revolving reflection stage, had this ability. Even Wei Han, who was in the spiritual silence stage, could not stab Murongyu to death. This was an irrefutable fact. Looking at Zhu Shi's sluggish face, Murongyu suddenly laughed. At the same time, he swayed his body and rode on the long spear. He turned into a black flowing light and charged toward Zhu Shi. It was at this moment that Zhu Shi finally reacted. He let out a low bellow, and a terrifying power suddenly erupted from his body. Above his head, 20 ferocious Pan-yu circled around him.
It was the power of the dragon's power of the early reflection stage. Clearly, Zhu Shi knew that it was impossible to kill Murongyu with just a flying sword. He finally used the power of the dragon. Murongyu's eyes flashed with a cold light, and he snorted. Suddenly, the aura on his body became violent. After a series of dragon roars, the crowd was shocked to see 20 dragon's power appear above Murongyu, who was only in the middle stage of the Foundation establishment stage. 20 dragon's power. The crowd was in an uproar, each of them with a shocked expression. However, the shock that Murongyu gave them wasn't limited to this. Murongyu stretched out his hand and grabbed the black spear that he had been stepping on. As for Murongyu, he stood in the air. He can actually fly with his body. How is this possible? The crowd was once again shocked by Murongyu. Flying with one's body was a great magical power that could only be obtained when one reached the out-of-body stage. But they did not know that Murongyu was not flying with his body at all. He was only using the flying cloud's 4-step technique to temporarily float in the air. But the crowd did not know. They all thought that Murongyu could fly with his body. Some even thought that Murongyu had reached the out-of-body stage. Zhu Shi mistakenly thought that Murongyu had reached the out-of-body stage. For a moment, he stood in the air and looked at Murongyu in a daze. Murongyu sneered. Zhu Shi's reaction in front of an enemy was no different from courting death. At the same time, Murong stabbed out with his spear. Murong is actually in the out-of-body stage. He's dead for sure. Looking at Murong floating in the air, Zhu Shi's heart was filled with fear. He could only stare blankly at Murong. Bang! He was in a daze, but Murong movements did not stop. He stabbed out with his spear. The power of 20 heavenly lions in addition to the mid-grade magic weapon, the Phoenix Spear. But Zhu Shi, who was in the out-of-body stage, had no power to resist at all. After a muffled sound, his entire body exploded into a cloud of blood. Murong figure flashed as he stepped into the air and landed on the ground. The spear in his hand had been slung across his back at some point in time. He's dead. Everyone was shocked when they saw Zhu Shi turn into a bloody mist. Each and every one of them looked at Murong in astonishment. Zhu Shi, who was in the out-of-body stage, was killed just like that. He did not even have time to react. Therefore, it was confirmed that Murong was an out-of-body stage expert. Only such a powerful cultivator would be able to kill Zhu Shi with a single strike. But wasn't Murong just an outer disciple? He had joined Zhuxianzong for less than a year. How could a demon be in the out-of-body stage? When he joined the sect, he was only in the Xiantian stage. Now it looks like he's only in the Foundation Establishment stage. You won't allow him to hide his cultivation and pretend to be a pig to eat the tiger? Someone sneered. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. If Murong was really pretending to be a pig to eat the tiger, then this person was too terrifying. Feng Jun's face was ashen, but he looked at Murong with incomparable hatred. The youth beside him, who was in the fusion stage, looked gloomy. Looking at Murong, his eyes were constantly flickering. No one knew what he was thinking. Murong only sneered at the reaction of the people around him. Killing the out-of-body stage Zhu Shi was not because Murong wanted to kill him. In fact, Murong wanted to intimidate everyone. He wanted to kill the chicken to warn the monkey. In such a large sect, if you did not have strength, you would be bullied by others. When you have absolute strength, you will be able to stand above everyone else. As long as he had strength, Murong would be able to develop better in Zhuxianzong and obtain better resources. Of course, Murong didn't care about those elixirs. What he cared about were other kinds of resources, such as going a place to gain experience. According to Murong's original intention, he did not have to kill Zhu Shi. But when he heard that they mistakenly thought he was an out-of-body stage cultivator, Murong ruthlessly killed him. Out-of-body stage. That was a stage stronger than the spirit tranquil stage. In Zhuxianzong, it was still the existence of a core disciple. Sneering in his heart, Murong strode towards Feng Jun. This kind of hedonistic disciple. Although Murong would not kill him, it was inevitable that he would teach him a lesson. What do you want to do? I'm Elder Feng's grandson. Seeing Murong walk over, Feng Jun's expression changed greatly. He immediately put on a brave front and shouted. Murong just coldly snorted and continued to stride forward. He did not care if you're the grandson of an elder or the son of the sect master. If you offend him, you must bear the consequences. Murong, everything has a limit. Junior brother Feng is not someone you can touch. At this time, the fusion stage cultivator behind Feng Jun stood up and looked at Murong and said in a deep voice, Little fusion stage cultivator, if you don't want to die, then scram. Murong's face was indifferent and full of killing intent. The fusion stage cultivator was startled, and his face showed a trace of anger. As a fusion stage cultivator, he could be considered an inner disciple of the sect. In Zhuxianzong, he could be considered to have some status. But in front of Murong, he was nothing. Of course, he also knew that with his cultivation, he was nothing in front of an out-of-body stage expert. But he had to protect Feng Jun. If anything happened to Feng Jun, then his life would come to an end. Immediately, Feng Jun stood in front of Feng Jun and looked at Murong with a dignified expression. At this moment, Feng Jun did not speak. Although he was a playboy, he also knew that an out-of-body stage expert was not someone he could provoke. The main thing was that there was no expert by his side. If there was an expert, he would directly clamor to kill Murong. Scram. Morong took a step forward. There was no stormy aura on his body, nor was there a breathtaking momentum. He just looked at the fusion stage cultivator indifferently. However, due to Morong's out-of-body stage cultivation, the fusion stage cultivator's face changed greatly. This idiot, why don't you retreat? Morong really wanted to slap this fusion stage cultivator to death. His current strength was only 20 Pan Liang's power, but a fusion stage cultivator had at least 30 Pan Liang's power. Morong was not his opponent at all. If he attacked, his identity as an out-of-body stage expert would be exposed. Junior Martial Brother Feng is Elder Feng's grandson. Elder Feng is very powerful. An out-of-body stage cultivator like you would not be able to withstand a single blow. If you let Junior Martial Brother Feng go, I believe Elder Feng will not blame you. While speaking, the fusion stage cultivator glanced at Feng Jun. Although Feng Jun was a playboy, he was not an idiot. He immediately understood the fusion stage cultivator's meaning and said, "That's right. If you let me go, then today's matter never happened." Morong pretended to think for a while. After a long time, seemingly because of Elder Feng, he said, "In that case, I will let you go for today." Before he finished speaking, the spear on his back popped out. Then, Morong soared into the sky and flew into the distance. When they saw Morong flying with his Imperial Spear Flight, coupled with his unique Imperial Spear Flight technique and his out-of-body stage cultivation, everyone looked at him in envy. Spear Kinesis Flight, so domineering. This won't do. I have to get a magic treasure spear try. He's actually an out-of-body stage cultivator. I must not provoke him in the future. That Spear Kinesis Flight is too cool. Morong did not know that his Spear Kinesis Flight had caused Zushinzong to enter a new trend of flying. Chapter 56. Spear Manipulation, Saber Manipulation. In short, other than flying swords, the Void Sky sect started a trend of flying on all kinds of magic tools. As the initiator of the trend, Morong flew towards Zushinzong's Chor Pavilion. Looking at Morong's back, Feng Jun on the ground gnashed his teeth, and his face was full of resentment. After all, he was the grandson of Elder Feng, and the humiliation he suffered today made him very angry. Because of his identity, no one dared to be disrespectful to him at all. Morong, out-of-body stage, I must kill you. Feng Jun grinned, flicked out a flying sword, and directly flew away. The Chor Pavilion was where Zushinzong dealt with all kinds of sundries and various operations. It was equivalent to a department of the secular dynasty. At this moment, Morong Huang leisurely walked out of the Chor Pavilion. The reason why he came here was because Morong needed to come here after breaking through to the Foundation Establishment stage. The so-called name was actually to go here to file a record. Although Morong was an outer disciple before, he was only a disciple in the Xiantian stage and basically did not have any benefits every month. After becoming an outer disciple in the Foundation Establishment stage, the benefits directly rose. Outer disciples in the Foundation Establishment stage had 5 energy recovery pills every month. Don't underestimate this energy recovery pill. It contained extremely huge power. The power contained in 5 pills every month was still enough for a Foundation Establishment stage disciple to absorb for a month. In the cultivation world, energy recovery pills were the most basic currency. In the cultivation world, there was no need for secular money, and all transactions required energy recovery pills. Therefore, in addition to providing spiritual energy to absorb, the energy recovery pill could also be used for shopping. Outer disciples in the Foundation Establishment stage had 5 energy recovery pills every month. Although it looked pitiful, but compared to some ordinary sects, it was already a luxury to have 1 energy recovery pill every month. Moreover, as one's strength became stronger and their status became higher, the treatment they could receive would be better. In other words, as long as one broke through a major realm, they would need to go to the Chor Pavilion to make a record. Otherwise, if you didn't register, the Chor Pavilion would only give you benefits based on your registered cultivation level. Even if you broke through to the transformation realm, If you only registered as a Foundation Establishment Realm cultivator, then you could only receive 5 origin returning pills every month. How troublesome. Thinking about it, Morong Yu felt speechless. He did not know why this big sect would make things so complicated. However, Morong Yu did not think that Zhushenzong was one of the top 10 sects after all, a super sect with hundreds of thousands of people. If there were no corresponding rules, wouldn't it be a mess? Coming out of the crafting pavilion, Morong Yu had 2 low-grade flying swords in his hands. This was the standard equipment of Zhushenzong's disciples. If you want to obtain a higher-grade flying sword or magic treasure, you'll need to be more powerful and contribute to the sect. For example, Gong Lianghao, who was at the Spirit Silent stage, had only obtained a high-grade magic tool. This was also because he had made a huge contribution to the sect. Otherwise, some successor disciples would only use flying swords and magic treasures of the mid-grade magic tool rank. After all, even if it was the lowest grade of first-grade spiritual tool in the cultivation world, it was something that could only be found by chance. Even Zhushenzong, one of the top 10 sects, did not have many of them. After all, although the crafting pavilion was powerful, the materials to forge spiritual tools were too rare. Of the 2 flying swords, one was used to fly and the other was used to fight the enemy. Otherwise, disciples who had not reached the out-of-body stage would not be able to fly. If they encountered an enemy in the air and did not have a magic tool to fight the enemy, then it would be a tragedy. In addition to the flying swords, Morong Yu also obtained a storage bag. This was a good thing. It was about the size of a house and could hold a lot of things. Of course, in Morong Yu's eyes, this kind of low-grade storage bag was absolutely not in his eyes. After all, he had the Hichu Luoshu world, which could be called the immortal world. However, with a storage bag as a cover, Morong Yu would not be suspected of being the Hichu Luoshu. Otherwise, without a storage bag, but taking out things out of thin air at any time, then everyone would know that you had a rare treasure. After putting the storage bag on his waist and throwing the 2 flying swords in, Morong Yu went to the alchemy pavilion again. After collecting this month's supply of energy recovery pills, he went back leisurely. Of course, from next month onwards, there would be people distributing spiritual pills, so Morong Yu did not have to come personally to collect them. Morong Yu rode the long spear and slowly walked toward his house in a very showy manner. It was not that he did not want to be fast, but in fact his speed was not fast, which was the average speed of an ordinary Foundation Establishment stage cultivator. On top of a mountain peak, after seeing Morong Yu ride the long spear past, a pair of resentful eyes appeared from the ground, like a viper staring at Morong Yu's figure gradually fading away. Brother, Morong Yu is getting stronger and stronger. Today, he even killed a revolving reflection stage cultivator. It is said that he can fly with his body. I'm afraid he has already reached the out-of-body stage. A gorgeous-looking youth looked at the resentful youth next to him and said, if Morong Yu was here, he would discover that this person was actually Morong Yan. And Morong Yan's brother was naturally Morong Ling. At this time, Morong Yu's cultivation had been destroyed by Morong Ling, and he had once again advanced to the Xiantian stage. Flying with his body, out-of-body stage. What a load of nonsense. Sister, don't you know that our Morong family has a flying cloud 4 steps? Morong Ling sneered, and then his figure rose into the air, stepping on the air, as if he was flying with his body. Seeing this scene, Morong Yan's eyes shot out 2 rays of light. Out-of-body stage? I want to see how much ability this out-of-body stage cultivator has. Morong Ling sneered. His voice was extremely resentful. Not long after, the news that Morong Yu was not an out-of-body stage cultivator, and the reason why he could fly was because of a cultivation method, spread out. It was not until someone saw Morong Ling using the flying cloud 4 steps that everyone realized that Morong Yu was just a trivial Foundation Establishment stage cultivator. After confirming this news, Feng Jun immediately came to find trouble with Morong Yu, especially the fusion stage cultivator. Because he was played by Morong Yu, he was very angry. However, Morong Yu seemed to have disappeared. No matter how hard they searched, they could not find Murong-yu. Feng Jun was naturally unwilling to accept this. Every day, he sent people to watch Murong-yu's courtyard. However, after half a month, there was still no trace of Murong-yu. Did Murong-yu disappear? Of course not. At this time, he was cultivating in the Hichu Luoshu world. After breaking through to the foundation establishment stage, Murong-yu not only unlocked the first seal of Hichu Luoshu, but also obtained endless wealth. The world of He-Tu and Luoshu had also expanded countless times, becoming even more vast. The most important thing was that the Hichu Luoshu world could only accelerate the passage of time by 2 times, but now it had been accelerated to 5 times. It meant that 1 day in the outside world was equivalent to 5 days in the Hichu Luoshu world. Of course, there were advantages and disadvantages to accelerating time. On one hand, it could allow Murong-yu to increase his strength in the shortest time possible. On the other hand, the consumption of his lifespan would be accelerated. After all, in the Hichu Luoshu world, one's lifespan would be equivalent to the passage of time. But these were not things that Murong-yu cared about, because when he broke through to the foundation establishment stage, his lifespan had already increased to 2,500 years. It was more terrifying than the average revolving reflection stage. Half a month in the outside world, 75 days had already passed in the Hichu Luoshu world, which was more than 2 months. In these 2 months, Murong-yu did not break through to the next stage. His current breakthrough speed was fast enough. If it was any faster, even the heavens would not tolerate it. Moreover, the average foundation establishment stage cultivator already had a lifespan of 1,000 years. What was the purpose of 1,000 years? It was used to help you break through to the next stage. Some cultivators with poor aptitude could not break through to the revolving reflection stage, even if they used 1,000 years. In other words, they could not break through to the revolving reflection stage in 1,000 years. This kind of people could be found everywhere. Murong-yu only used a year or so to advance from a mortal to the foundation establishment stage. This kind of speed might not be unprecedented in history, but it was definitely a rare figure. Of course, in these 2 months, Murong-yu did not break through to the next stage, but his power was more condensed, and his control of flying swords was also more skillful. Records of the chaotic celestial body, dragon elephant prajna technique, tiger roar imperial fist, flying cloud 4 steps. These were all of Murong-yu's cultivation techniques. In addition to the records of the chaotic celestial body, which was used to temper the body, the tiger roar imperial fist and dragon elephant prajna technique were both cultivation techniques for physical combat. Although they were secular martial arts techniques, with the support of true inner force, they had extremely terrifying power. In these 2 months, Murong-yu deliberately cultivated these 2 cultivation techniques again and found that the strength of these 2 cultivation techniques was not ordinary, so he did not abandon them. Moreover, the fighting style of these 2 cultivation techniques was exactly what Murong-yu liked: close combat. As for flying cloud 4 steps before the out-of-body stage, it could allow Murong-yu to temporarily fly with his body. It was also an indispensable cultivation technique. Of course, this was something that Murong-yu had already considered early on. The myriad sword technique, when cultivated to the extreme, could control 10,000 swords and had unparalleled destructive power. The reason why Murong-yu cultivated this set of cultivation techniques was only to familiarize himself with the use of flying swords. Moreover, this set of sword techniques could cultivate his mind. After all, controlling flying swords required mental control. Only when his mind was stronger could he control more flying swords. Well, it's been 2 months. Although I did not break through to the next stage, my strength has increased a little. Murong-yu felt his strength, and then came out of the Hichu Luoshu world. Opening the door, he looked at the sky and found that it was already noon. Therefore, Murong-yu leisurely flew in the direction of the canteen on his spear. Just as Murong-yu left his room, he was discovered by an outer court disciple from the same courtyard as him. Suddenly, one by one. They looked at Murong-yu with strange eyes. This guy is too good at hiding. He came out as soon as Feng Jun's people left. TSK, TSK. Chapter 57. It turned out that Feng Jun's people had been lying in ambush here for half a month, but they didn't see any trace of Murong-yu, so they finally returned. However, they didn't expect that just as they left, Murong-yu would come out. If they were to find out, how could they endure it? These outer sect disciples all thought that Murong-yu was deliberately hiding, but no one knew that Murong-yu wasn't afraid of Feng Jun. It was just a coincidence. Murong-yu was in the cafeteria eating heartily, but he inadvertently heard these outer sect disciples talking about something. It seemed that they were going to go to some place to gain experience. Murong-yu listened for a while and vaguely heard the gist of it. The general idea was that the annual experience had arrived. Foundation establishment stage disciples also had a share, and they were going to a place called Demon Mountain to gain experience. After listening for a long time, Murong-yu got the gist of it, and he immediately became impatient. After eating everything on the table, he sat down on a seat next to the table. "Senior brothers, you were too polite. Just now you were talking about going to the Demon Mountain to gain experience. What is it about?" Because he had something to ask, Murong-yu was very polite. The 4 Foundation establishment stage cultivators at the table were in the middle of talking when they were suddenly interrupted by a stranger. They immediately felt very unhappy. Immediately, they looked at Murong-yu and found that Murong-yu was only a middle Foundation establishment stage cultivator, so they turned their faces away, too lazy to care about Murong-yu. Murong-yu didn't mind, and just smiled, and said again, "For senior brothers are too polite, I want to ask about the Demon Mountain." Scram. Before Murong-yu's voice fell, the late Foundation establishment stage cultivator sitting next to him shouted, and slapped Murong-yu, wanting to send Murong-yu flying. The 4 of them were Foundation establishment late-stage disciples, and one of them had already stepped into the revolving reflection stage. Each and every one of them had their eyes on top of their heads. How could they possibly think highly of Murong-yu, who was merely in the middle stage of Foundation establishment? Murong-yu's face turned cold, and a murderous intent flashed between his brows. These bastards who look down on others, refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. A sharp killing intent flashed in Murong-yu's heart. He was very unhappy. Just as the palm was about to hit him, Murong-yu moved and struck out with his palm. Bang! Murong-yu's big hand directly sent the late Foundation establishment stage cultivator flying. He had the strength of 20 heavenly lions and could even kill a revolving reflection stage cultivator with one stab. How could these Foundation establishment stage cultivators be his match? After a loud bang, the late-stage Foundation establishment cultivator smashed a few chairs and even sent a few people flying. Then, he collapsed on the floor of the cafeteria, no longer breathing. No one knew if he was dead or alive. "How dare you? You're courting death." When they saw that Murong-yu had actually sent their friends flying, the remaining 3 Foundation establishment cultivators were stunned for a moment before they flew into a rage. They roared in unison and simultaneously attacked Murong-yu. Murong-yu's face was indifferent. He was very disgusted with these arrogant people who thought they were invincible onto the heavens. He didn't seem to make any movements, but just slapped out with his palm. Bang, bang, bang. After 3 muffled sounds, the 3 late-stage Foundation establishment stage cultivators were directly sent flying by his palm. Not a single one was lucky enough to escape. Hiss! Seeing this scene, everyone in the cafeteria was shocked. It must be known that many of the people present were revolving reflection stage cultivators. They could tell at a glance that Murong-yu's group of 5 were cultivators. Previously, the late-stage Foundation establishment stage cultivator was sent flying by luck. But was it also a fluke that sent 3 Foundation establishment stage cultivators flying at the same time? Was this person really only in the middle stage of Foundation establishment stage? This question arose in many people's hearts. This person looks familiar. Looking at Murong-yu, some people felt that he looked familiar, but they couldn't remember who he was. Black Spear, he is that Murong Yu. A person first looked at the black spear on Murong Yu's back in a daze, and then suddenly cried out in alarm. So, he is that Murong Yu. I heard that he is an out-of-body stage cultivator? Bullshit, out-of-body stage. He is only in the middle stage of foundation establishment stage. Sue, this child is vicious and merciless, even if he is not in the out-of-body stage. But don't forget, he killed the revolving reflection stage, Zhu, she with a single spear. That is true strength. Someone said in a low voice. The outer sect disciples cafeteria, only the outer sect disciples and those disciples in name could eat here. As for the outer sect disciples, the strongest was only in the revolving reflection stage. Murong Yu had killed Zhu, she, with a single spear. Although he was only in the early stage of the revolving reflection stage, he was still in the revolving reflection stage. Hearing that disciple's words, everyone present fell silent, not daring to continue talking about Murong Yu. After all, at their level of cultivation, their hearing was very sharp. Even if they whispered, Murong Yu could hear them clearly, unless they used their divine sense to communicate. You're only in the middle stage of foundation establishment stage, yet you are so arrogant. Just as everyone quieted down, a disdainful voice came from a corner of the cafeteria. The voice was full of disdain and ridicule. It was obvious that this person looked down on Murong Yu. Murong Yu frowned slightly, then sneered in his heart and turned to look. What are you looking at? Do you believe that I will kill you? Just as Murong Yu looked over, he saw a very disdainful look, and at the same time, an arrogant and egotistical voice sounded out in the cafeteria. Murong Yu's face twitched, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. He was already arrogant enough, but who knew that this person was even more arrogant? Moreover, Murong Yu's arrogance was built on his powerful strength, and that was self-confidence. And the person who spoke was in the late stage of foundation establishment stage, one stage higher than Murong Yu. But in front of Murong Yu, how could he be arrogant? Idiot. Murong Yu didn't even have a desire to make a move against this kind of person, and only silently cursed. However, Murong Yu didn't want to make a move, but that youth clearly didn't want to let him go. Chi! A green light appeared out of nowhere, and then a sharp sound broke through the air, and then it quickly strangled Murong Yu. Flying sword. Once again, he wanted to kill Murong Yu. Murong Yu's eyes narrowed slightly. It seems that killing the chicken to warn the monkey didn't work. Since that's the case, I'll kill you. Murong Yu's heart was already filled with murderous intent. The moment the flying sword was in front of him, he fiercely punched the flying sword. Crack! The low-grade flying sword couldn't withstand a single blow, and Murong Yu directly broke it into several pieces. And the youth who attacked spat out blood when his flying sword was broken. But obviously, Murong Yu didn't want to let this person go. In a flash, Murong Yu had already rushed forward. His large hand grabbed the air and grabbed the other party's neck, choking him as if he was grabbing a chick. The youth looked at Murong Yu in horror, and there was an indescribable fear in his eyes. Murong Yu sneered, "Idiot, you want to be famous? If there's a next life, wipe your dog eyes clean and see clearly there are some people you can't offend." The youth looked at Murong Yu in horror, and there was a pleading look in his eyes. The reason why he disdained Murong Yu was that one, he was jealous of Murong Yu's relationship, and the other was that he wanted to be famous. Today, Murong Yu had a certain reputation in Zushinzong, and he was just a cultivator in the middle stage of foundation establishment. If he could defeat or kill Murong Yu, then he would be famous. However, he didn't measure his strength. In front of Murong Yu, he couldn't withstand a single blow. Murong Yu sneered, and with a little force, he directly broke the youth's neck. Then he threw him away. As for killing a person, would the sect investigate? Murong Yu certainly didn't worry about this problem. For the hundreds of thousands of disciples in Zushinzong, there were many disciples dying every day. Anyway, they were all low-level disciples. If Zushinzong also wanted to meddle in this kind of thing, it would be too troublesome. However, if it was some particularly talented disciples or descendants of some big shots, it was different. Zhu Shinzong absolutely couldn't let these people die. However, Moronyu was an idiot. The cultivators he'd killed were all people with ordinary aptitudes. Just like the youth just now. Although he looked like he was in his 20s, he was actually 200 or 300 years old. He had only cultivated to the late stage of foundation establishment at the age of 2 or 3. Even if this kind of disciple wasn't killed, he would only die of old age. Seeing that Moronyu was ruthless and directly killed a late-stage foundation establishment cultivator, the cafeteria became even quieter. Moronyu indifferently swept his gaze over the crowd. Then he walked over to the cultivator he'd slapped away and kicked him awake. Ew. As soon as this person woke up and was about to curse, Moronyu stepped on him and directly stomped the word bastard into his stomach. If you don't want to die, answer me honestly. Otherwise, I don't mind killing you. Moronyu's voice was cold and filled with killing intent. It made the late-stage foundation establishment cultivator who was stepped on feel a chill in his heart. Killing intent. Bear, killing intent. The youth who was stepped on by Moronyu didn't doubt that if he continued to resist Moronyu would directly kill him. A strong aura of death rose from his heart. He looked at Moronyu with a face full of horror. Moronyu's brows slightly wrinkled as an ice-cold, killing intent emanated from him. The young man jumped in fright and hurriedly said, "That's a trial mission." The Demon Mountain was a forbidden area in the cultivation world. Demonic beasts ran rampant inside, and it was full of danger. Legend has it that even tribulation-passing experts didn't dare to go deep into the Demon Mountain. The so-called trial mission was an activity that the 10 great sects jointly organized every year to train their foundation establishment disciples. Of course, they were only training in the outermost area of the Demon Mountain, hunting demonic beasts, collecting spiritual herbs, and training the disciples' adaptability in order to increase their strength. This was the original intention of the 10 great sections. Chapter 58. Of course, the 10 great sects would not force all the foundation establishment disciples to participate in the trial. After all, it was the Demon Mountain, which was very dangerous. Even the outer area was full of danger. As long as one was a foundation establishment cultivator, they could sign up for the trial. Of course, as a forbidden area for cultivators, there were endless wealth, monsters, treasures, and all kinds of opportunities. Therefore, every year, the Demon Mountain would welcome wave after wave of explorations. Of course, these people would not be protected by the sections. The foundation establishment cultivators were protected by the sects because every trial, the sects would send experts of a certain level to protect these people. After all, it was only the outer area. Compared to those experts, there was not much danger. I have also reached the foundation establishment stage. It is time to test my strength. After pondering for a moment, Moronyu kicked the disciple under his foot and was about to leave to sign up for the trial. Wu Feng. At this time, Moronyu inadvertently saw Wu Feng in the cafeteria. Wu Feng jumped in fright. When he saw that it was Moronyu, he immediately ran over. With a somewhat reserved expression, he looked at Moronyu and asked, "Boss, what's the matter?" This guy had been watching Moronyu show his power in the cafeteria. In addition to the things that Moronyu did before, he felt the gap between himself and Moronyu. Originally, he wanted to follow Moronyu, but seeing Moronyu's cruel and merciless appearance, he was scared. Therefore, even if he was in the cafeteria, he did not dare to go up and greet Moronyu. Moronyu took out an energy recovery pill. Wu Feng took it, and then Moronyu said, "This is an energy recovery pill. I will give it to you. Deal with the corpse for me." After saying that, Moronyu did not care about Wu Feng's reaction and directly left the cafeteria. Energy recovery pill. Looking at the full pill in his hand, Wu Feng's face suddenly became excited. Although he was an outer sect disciple, he had not yet reached the foundation establishment stage, so it was impossible for him to have an energy recovery pill. In the cafeteria, the disciples who had heard Moronyu's words were all greedily looking at the yuan-returning pills in Wu Feng's hands. It must be known that even for a cultivator at the revolving reflection stage, They only had 10 yuan returning pills in a month. However, Morong Yu casually gave one to Wu Feng. Was this Morong Yu being generous, or did he not care at all? Wu Feng's eyes lit up. He felt that it was really worth it to rely on this boss. Thus, he kept the pill of rejuvenation close to his body and ran over to deal with the young man's corpse. Immediately, Wu Feng returned to his original form and swallowed the energy recovery pill. Under the stimulation of the energy recovery pill, Wu Feng broke through to the foundation establishment stage in no time. This made Wu Feng even more determined to follow Morong Yu. A single energy recovery pill, compared to Morong Yu, was nothing. The Hichu Luoshu world was like an ocean of pills. The reason why he was so generous to give one to Wu Feng was not because Morong Yu was really generous, but because he had a plan. After all, Morong Yu had only just arrived in the cultivation world. He was not familiar with this place and was alone. If he wanted to develop in the cultivation world, he obviously could not do it alone. He needed friends and people who could do things for him. And Wu Feng was naturally one of Morong Yu's people who would work for him in the future. However, this was the cultivation world. If he wanted to do things, he would need to have formidable strength. Therefore, he gave the energy recovery pill to Wu Feng so that he could break through to the foundation establishment stage as soon as possible. However, Morong Yu did not know that in the cafeteria, many people had witnessed his generous behavior, which led to many things happening in the future. Moreover, Morong Yu did not seem to worry that after giving the energy recovery pill to Wu Feng would be able to keep it. In Morong Yu's heart, he had given the energy recovery pill to Wu Feng. If it was snatched away, then Wu Feng naturally would not have the qualifications to be trained by Morong Yu. After leaving the cafeteria, Morong Yu directly flew to the Chore Pavilion to sign up for the Devil Mountain trial. Morong Yu came out of seclusion at the right time. Today was the last day of registration. On the second day, Morong Yu came to the huge square in front of the Chore Pavilion. This square was originally an incomparably huge mountain, reaching a radius of thousands of miles. It was said that it was later cut off by a powerful person in Zushinzong and became the square today. Morong Yu did not have any doubts about this. After all, it was normal for experts in the cultivation world to move mountains and fill seas. The situation was different from what Morong Yu imagined. In the entire huge square, there were only a few people standing there. There were about a few thousand people. A few thousand compared to an ordinary small sect, perhaps all the disciples. However, Zushinzong had hundreds of thousands of disciples. Among them, there were at least 100,000 Foundation Establishment disciples. Out of 100,000 Foundation Establishment disciples, only a few thousand disciples were participating in the trial. It was really a little miserable, greedy and afraid of death things. Morong Yu sneered. In his heart, he was extremely disdainful of those Foundation Establishment disciples who did not participate in the trial. However, Morong Yu did not know that every year, the death and injury of the Devil Mountain trial was huge. Even if it was only at the outermost periphery of the Devil Mountain, there were experts from the sect protecting them. But every time, the death rate of the Devil Mountain trial exceeded 50%. In other words, out of the 3,000 people now, after half a year, only 1,500 people would be able to return. Moreover, many Foundation Establishment disciples had already participated in the trial once. Experiencing life and death was enough for them. The most important thing was that there were endless opportunities inside, but they had to be alive or return. However, even so, Morong Yu could not help but despise these people. After all, only by experiencing life and death and the trial of blood could one's strength increase. Otherwise, even if one cultivated until the transformation stage in Zushinzong and ascended, one would not be able to do so. Although their cultivation level was high, their combat power was definitely not much. I am Elder Feng, together with Elder Lin. We are the elders of this trial. A well-built elder stood on the high platform and said in a deep voice, Elder Feng. Morong Yu's heart skipped a beat, and he could not help but look over. He seemed to remember that he had beaten up Feng Jun, who was said to be Elder Feng's grandson. He did not know if that elder and this elder were the same person. When Murongyu looked at Elder Feng, Hichu's voice rang in his ears. Combination stage. This gave Murongyu a huge fright. Combination stage. Murongyu was shocked. One must know that the cultivation world was divided into 10 stages. The highest was the transformation stage, followed by the tribulation stage, and then the combination stage. They were the true experts in the cultivation world. Foundation establishment stage, revolving reflection stage, fusion stage, heartbeat stage, silent spirit stage, out-of-body stage, spirit severing stage, and then the combination stage. In Zushinzong, powerhouses in the combination stage could only be elders. However, in some small and medium-sized sects, their strongest powerhouse was probably only at this level. At that moment, Elder Feng and Elder Lin explained the rules and dangers of the Demon Mountain trial. Then, they directly took out 2 flying artifacts. This was an incomparably huge artifact that looked like a ship. This kind of artifact did not have any attack power. Its only function was to transport and fly. Just like this time's group activity, a flying ship carried more than 1,000 people. Then, it directly turned into a stream of light and flew in the direction of the Demon Mountain. Although the flying artifact did not have any attack power, its speed was extremely fast. It was many times faster than Murongyu's spear kinesis flight. This made Murongyu somewhat depressed. Hichu, is there a similar flying artifact in the Hichu Luoshu world? Looking at the fast flying artifact, Murongyu was depressed. However, at the same time, he also wanted to get one to play with. Flying artifact? What do you want that trash for? Hichu's words made Murongyu even more depressed. Feeling this kind of fast thing was trash in Hichu's eyes. Not only does your teacher have powerful battle power, he also has unparalleled speed. Hichu indifferently said. Murongyu was speechless. Although Zhao Yun's speed was unparalleled in the world, his own speed was simply unbearable to look at. Although spear kinesis flight was very flashy, Murongyu's speed was really not worth mentioning. Find an opportunity to get a cultivation technique to play with. Murongyu said in his heart. Demon Mountain, in the central region of the cultivation world. With a flying artifact speed comparable to a transformation stage expert, it still took half a month to appear at the periphery of the Demon Mountain. Opening the artifact, everyone flew out on their swords. Murongyu, who came out on his spear kinesis flight, was very different. Naturally, he attracted everyone's attention. Murongyu? After seeing Murongyu, Feng Jun's face could not help but become ferocious. There were too many people before he actually did not see Murongyu. Later on, there was a different flying artifact. Feng Jun's face was ferocious. His eyes flashed with resentment, and he sneered, "You actually came to participate in the Demon Mountain trial. This time, you can forget about going back." As he spoke, Feng Jun flew directly towards Elder Feng on his sword. Murongyu stopped in the void with his spear kinesis flight. At a glance, he found that in addition to the Zushinzong disciples, there were many more people. These were people from the other 10 sections. I wonder if Jiqing is participating in this trial. Murongyu's eyes searched the crowd. However, there were too many people here. He did not know that these people were from the Hidden Fairy Valley. Remember, don't go deep into the Demon Mountain. Otherwise, no one can save you. Before leaving, Elder Feng and Elder Lin warned with a dignified expression. Immediately, tens of thousands of Foundation Establishment Stage disciples from the 10 great sects rode on their flying swords. They turned into streams of light and rushed into the Demon Mountain. Murongyu's spear kinesis flight was not only different, but also very eye-catching. In an instant, not only the Zushinzong disciples saw his eye-catching figure, but even the disciples of the other sects nearby also noticed his existence. This person is Murongyu? On the peak, when Elder Feng and Elder Lin saw Murongyu flying on his spear kinesis flight, they could not help but be stunned. Their faces revealed a strange expression. Chapter 59. Elder Lin also looked at Murong Yu in astonishment. This guy's flashy appearance was really like a crane in a flock of chickens. It was impossible for him not to be in the limelight. In fact, Murong Yu's spear flight had already spread throughout Zhushenzong. Even a high and mighty elder Feng and elderly had heard of it before. Now that they saw Murong Yu with their own eyes, they were still a little surprised. However, the Foundation establishment disciples of Zhushenzong all looked at Murong Yu with envy. Their eyes seemed to want to pull Murong Yu down from the spear and then step on it to fly. Who is that person? What a strange appearance. A nearby Limitless Sword Sect disciple looked at Murong Yu with a shocked expression. In fact, it was not only him. The others were the same. Suddenly, the void was filled with cultivators standing on their swords. Each of them looked at Murong Yu with a strange gaze. That person is a disciple of Zhushenzong. His name is Murong Yu. Not long after, Murong Yu's flashy appearance and his identity spread among the disciples of the nearby sections. Then, it quickly spread to all the sects that entered the Demon Mountain. In the direction of the Sky Yin sect, Murong Hao's face was gloomy and terrifying. It was probably because he heard the news about Murong Yu. Moreover, it seemed that Murong Yu was very flashy. This made him very unhappy. However, Murong Hao had also broken through to the Foundation establishment stage. This meant that his aptitude was still very good. Immediately, he remembered his father's instructions before he came to the Demon Mountain. If you meet Murong Yu, kill him without mercy. Murong Yu killed Murong Ji, and their family could not live under the same sky. Murong Hao, especially Murong Dan, gritted their teeth when they mentioned Murong Yu. As an elder of the Sky Expanse sect, Wei Shuiyin had almost killed her way to Zhushenzong. It was only because of Zhushenzong that she didn't dare to act rashly. Murong Yu, I didn't expect you to have also reached the Foundation establishment stage. Since you have entered the Devil Mountain, you shall be buried here. Murong Hao's heart was filled with killing intent. With a cold snort, he flew up on his sword and charged into the Devil Mountain with his senior brothers. 10 miles away from Zhushenzong, the people of the hidden Fairy Valley, one of the top 10 sects in the world of cultivation, were all gathered here. Among the many disciples, there were many men lingering around a young girl. Their expressions were flattering, and they were constantly saying something, as if they were trying to please her. If Murong was here, he would realize that this girl was Zhao Jiqing. Speaking of Zhao Jiqing, her master, the elder of the hidden Fairy Valley, Wang Fu Ran Shui, took her in as a disciple after receiving her from the hidden Fairy Valley. Moreover, because Zhao Jiqing had the immortal spiritual body, she was greatly cultivated by Wang Fu Ran Shui and even the hidden Fairy Valley. Therefore, in less than a year, her cultivation had already reached the late stage of the Foundation establishment stage. This cultivation speed was simply too frightening. It was even faster than Murong Yu's. If Murong Yu saw this, he would be depressed for most of the day. However, Zhao Jiqing's aptitude was already very high. Coupled with the immortal spiritual body, it was not surprising that her cultivation speed was fast. However, the immortal spiritual body was far inferior to the supreme, chaotic, celestial body. After all, although Murong Yu was only at the middle stage of the Foundation establishment stage, he could easily kill a cultivator at the revolving reflection stage. Moreover, his body had already reached the level of a high-grade magic tool. Zhao Jiqing's cultivation speed immediately shocked the hidden Immortal Valley. Coupled with her stunning beauty, the hidden Immortal Valley was shocked. Although she had only entered the hidden Fairy Valley for less than a year, she was vaguely known as the #1 beauty of the hidden Fairy Valley. If it were not for the fact that the Foundation establishment stage and above cultivators could not enter, there would be even more people lingering around Zhao Jiqing. However, in the hidden Fairy Valley, except for Wang Fu Ran Shui, no matter who she faced, Zhao Jiqing had an ice-cold appearance. But even so, it still could not stop those toads that wanted to eat swan meat. Senior sister, I don't know if you've heard? There's a Foundation establishment stage disciple at Zhushenzong who can fly on a spear. It's very eye-catching. A youth ran to Zhao Jiqing's side, flattering and fawning. Haha, junior brother, I know this person. He can actually fly on a black spear. Although it's strange, it's very eye-catching. I heard that he's also a disciple who entered Zushinzong this year. His name is Murongyu. Zhao Jiqing's face was originally cold, but after hearing the 3 words Murongyu, her eyes unexpectedly flashed with a touch of splendor. Yes, and I heard that this person is not afraid of anything. He's only at the middle stage of the foundation establishment stage, but he killed a cultivator at the revolving reflection stage. I don't know if it's true or not. Another youth quickly said, afraid that others would steal his limelight. The few of them chattered and told her everything they'd heard about Murongyu. Suddenly, one of them discovered that the usually cold Zhao Jiqing's eyes were shining with splendor. That iceberg-like face seemed to melt, and she even revealed a trace of a smile. When they saw the trace of a smile on Zhao Jiqing's face, everyone couldn't help but stare blankly. Even the female disciples at Zhao Jiqing's side couldn't help but stare blankly. Humph! Seeing the unbearable expressions of the male disciples, Zhao Jiqing coldly snorted and once again returned to her cold appearance. Only, her mind involuntarily flashed with the image of Murongyu flying on a spear. The surrounding people reacted and immediately knew that things weren't good. They discovered that Zhao Jiqing seemed to be interested in Murongyu. This was not a good thing for them. Humph! That Murongyu is definitely not welcome in Zushinzong. From the fact that Zushinzong didn't even give him a flying sword, you can see it. A youth said disdainfully. Everyone nodded their heads in agreement. However, Zhao Jiqing's eyes turned cold. Of course, she knew that Murongyu's spear wasn't simple. But why did she have to tell these people? Whoosh! Suddenly, a blue flying sword appeared under Zhao Jiqing's feet. Then, she turned into a ray of light and directly rushed into the Demon Mountain. Immediately, the disciples of the hidden fairy valley followed her in. Murongyu flew slowly towards the Demon Mountain on his spear. However, he didn't know that his current flamboyant appearance had already spread to the 10 great sects in the periphery of the Demon Mountain. Murongyu, who was flying on his spear, suddenly paused and smiled coldly. However, very quickly, he continued to move forward as if nothing had happened. Not far behind Murongyu, a few figures were following Murongyu at a distance that was neither too far nor too close. Whoosh! Whoosh! Murongyu suddenly sped up and rushed into the Demon Mountain. The few figures behind him also sped up and chased after him. The Demon Mountain was one of the few forbidden areas in the cultivation world. It had a radius of 1,000,000 miles and was extremely vast. Looking from afar, the vast and boundless Demon Mountain was shrouded in demon chi and seemed a little dark. An ancient aura rushed towards them, as if telling them that the Demon Mountain wasn't ordinary. In the cultivation world, the Demon Mountain was a forbidden area. Other than the lingering demon chi, there were all kinds of powerful demonic beasts running amok inside. Even experts in the tribulation stage didn't dare to go deep. Even those in the peak transformation stage would have a slim chance of survival if they went deep into the Demon Mountain. However, for countless years, most of the demonic beasts in the periphery of the Demon Mountain had been killed by the cultivation world. Therefore, it gradually evolved into a place for the 10 great sects to train their disciples. Speaking of demon chi, it was different from the ordinary yuan chi of heaven and earth. It was black in color and was very dense. As one went deeper, the demon chi became denser. Legend had it that in the deepest part of the Demon Mountain, the demon chi was so dense that it almost materialized. Even experts in the transformation stage would find it difficult to breathe after entering and would be unable to absorb the yuan chi of heaven and earth. In fact, at their cultivation level, they didn't need to breathe anymore. However, they needed to absorb the yuan chi of heaven and earth. Otherwise, the energy stored in their bodies would be depleted very quickly. In the Chor Pavilion, Murongyu had learned about the Demon Mountain. Although there were many demonic beasts in the outermost area of the Demon Mountain, they were only in the foundation establishment stage. It was suitable for foundation establishment stage disciples to cultivate. Moreover, in this area, the demon qi was the thinnest and wouldn't hinder cultivators from absorbing the yuan qi of heaven and earth. This demon qi? Morong Yu, who had just stepped into the demon mountain, exclaimed. It was strange. The demon qi lingered on the demon mountain all day long and reached the sky. However, it seemed to be bound and would never dissipate outside of the demon mountain. The mountain was tall and dense, the forest was majestic, and the mountains were steep and precipitous. In the demon mountain, demonic beasts ran amok, and there were countless flying demonic beasts. Therefore, after entering the demon mountain, everyone landed. Otherwise, if they were to fly in the void, they would be attacked by a group of demonic beasts and would be torn to pieces. At this moment, Morong Yu was standing in a forest with his eyes closed and a happy expression on his face. No one knew what he was doing. Is this really the demon qi? Originally, Morong Yu had only absorbed the demonic qi out of curiosity to see what was so special about it. However, after absorbing the energy, he discovered something strange. He could actually absorb the demon qi. Moreover, the speed of absorption was several times faster than when he was absorbing the yuan qi of heaven and earth in Zushinzong. Of course, this was also because the demon qi here was thicker. What shocked Morong Yu the most was that after the demon qi was absorbed into his body, it merged with his energy. One must know that absorbing the yuan qi of heaven and earth had to go through the process of transformation before it could become one's own true qi. This was the same for all cultivators. He could absorb the demon qi. Moreover, Morong Yu was shocked to realize that his energy seemed to be the same as the demon qi here. After realizing this, Morong Yu was shocked. Then he thought of a terrifying result. His energy was the same as the demon qi. In other words, his energy was the demon qi. One must know that in the cultivation world, the demon mountain was one of the few forbidden areas. The black gas lingering on the demon mountain was called the demon qi by people. The so-called demon qi was an existence that was not tolerated by the righteous Tao. It was an existence that was not tolerated by heaven and earth and was hated by all righteous Tao cultivators. Chapter 60. It was similar to the existence of negative emotions such as inner demons. In fact, there was no such thing as the devil path or the righteous path in the cultivation world. He could directly absorb these powers to increase his strength. If he cultivated here, he would be able to achieve twice the results with half the effort. Originally, Morong Yu was very happy when he discovered that he could absorb the devil qi. However, after thinking about it, he broke out in cold sweat. Why? Because the devil qi was a power that cultivators in the world could not tolerate. If someone discovered that his power was the same as the devil qi, Morong Yu would definitely be killed. Luckily, I was not discovered by the higher-ups of Zushinzong. Otherwise, I would have been killed. Morong Yu felt lucky. The strongest person he had faced before was only at the fusion stage. He did not know anything about the devil qi. If he encountered an elder, he would probably recognize that Morong Yu's power was the Devil Mountain's devil qi. In fact, if Morong Yu's power was exposed, there would be two outcomes. One was to be killed directly. The other was to be captured and studied. After all, who would not want a cultivation technique that could directly absorb the devil qi? Because directly absorbing the devil qi meant that one would become stronger quickly. No matter what the outcome was, Morong Yu could not accept it. Could it be that I can't display my power in front of others in the future? Morong Yu was a little depressed. Moreover, he also felt that the so-called devil qi was definitely not devil qi. Although it was black, it did not emit a cruel, cold, or negative aura. Instead, it was full of righteousness. However, because it could not be absorbed by others, it was called devil qi. Just as Morong Yu was feeling depressed, Hichu's voice rang in Morong Yu's ears. A bunch of frogs at the bottom of a well. Such righteousness is called devil qi. What idiots! Morong Yu was overjoyed and quickly asked, Hichu, You know the origin of the devil chi? Devil chi? Hichu sneered and said, "This is the most authentic and the most powerful power in the world. The power of chaos. Just like your physique, the power you cultivate is also the power of chaos." It was the power of primal chaos. Morongyu was shocked. Primal chaos energy. The energy he cultivated was actually primal chaos energy. Moreover, the so-called devil chi in the Devil Mountain was also primal chaos energy. Not many people knew about the so-called primal chaos energy. However, the power of chaos was the most fundamental existence that made up this world. In other words, the primal chaos energy was the origin of everything. After all, this world was formed from chaos. Everything that existed would return to chaos and fuse with heaven and earth after dust returned to dust. Chaos was the origin of all matter. It could be said that everything in the world was derived from chaos. However, chaotic energy was the highest level of energy because it was the origin of all things. The primal energy of heaven and earth, whether it was in the cultivation world or the immortal world, was actually the power of chaos. It was just a power that had been diluted billions of times. In the universe, as long as one was a living being, they would have to live in the midst of all sorts of powers. However, different levels of life forms could accept different levels of power. Just like mortals in the secular world, even Sciention realm warriors could not absorb the primal energy of heaven and earth. Only cultivators could absorb and refine the primal energy of heaven and earth. Of course, the primal energy of heaven and earth in the cultivation world was only the lowest level of primal energy. In the immortal world, this kind of primal energy would be of an even higher level. Listening to Hichu's explanation, Morongyu fell silent. He began to understand. Cultivators could only absorb the lowest level of primal energy of heaven and earth in the cultivation world. Even if they encountered the highest level of primal energy of heaven and earth in the immortal world, they would not be able to absorb it. If they tried to absorb it forcefully, their physical body would not be able to withstand it, and they would explode and die. It was the same for the primal energy that had been diluted billions of times. However, what about the primal energy? It could not be absorbed at all. This was because the primal energy was too high level and dense. In fact, many cultivators would feel suffocated when they appeared in the primal energy. This was because among the pure primal energy, there was only a high concentration of primal energy. There would not be any diluted energy. Therefore, there was no energy that could be absorbed. Just like the Demon Mountain in the cultivation world, people were ignorant because they could not absorb the energy. Moreover, if the primal energy was too high level, there would even be a kind of pressure. This led to the saying that the primal energy in the Demon Mountain had turned into demonic energy. That's not right. If it's really impossible to absorb the primal energy, then why would there be demonic beasts in the Demon Mountain? There might be some diluted primal energy of heaven and earth in the periphery, but I'm afraid there won't be any other energy in the depths, Morongyu suddenly said with a frown. Perhaps the primal energy here is not very pure. It might be mixed with other energy. Or maybe all the demonic beasts in the Demon Mountain have mutated. Hichu pondered for a moment before saying with uncertainty, "This Demon Mountain has existed for God knows how long. It's one of the few forbidden areas in the cultivation world. There are powerful demonic beasts in there. This is definitely true. Perhaps after countless years, the demonic beasts in there mutated and could directly absorb the primal energy." After a pause, Hichu suddenly said with a smile, "To others, the Demon Mountain might be a forbidden area, but to you, it's a land of fortune. Of course, that's only if you don't meet any powerful demonic beasts." Morongyu nodded. He naturally knew what Hichu was trying to say. Here, other cultivators were unable to absorb the primal energy of heaven and earth. Every bit of energy that was consumed in their body would be reduced. However, Morongyu was here. The entire Demon Mountain was like a power shield for Morongyu. As long as Morongyu could still absorb energy, The primal energy could be directly absorbed by Murong-yu. As long as he was in the Demon Mountain, Murong-yu would definitely not have any signs of energy exhaustion. I want to see if the demonic beasts in the Demon Mountain can directly absorb the primal energy for cultivation. Murong-yu pondered for a moment before leaving. At a corner not far behind Murong-yu, there were a few figures hidden there. They had been watching Murong-yu. Among them, one of them was Feng Jun, who had a grudge against Murong-yu. Did this bastard discover us? Feng Jun's face was gloomy as he looked at Murong-yu's back. Murderous intent flashed in his heart. Since Murong-yu entered here, he had stopped here and did not leave. This made Feng Jun somewhat suspicious. However, they did not know that Murong-yu did not just stop there. Boy, there are people following you. Be careful, Hichu suddenly warned. Murong-yu sneered. He already knew that there were people following him. It's just a few Foundation Establishment disciples. If they dare to make a move, I will directly destroy them. Although Murong-yu was only at the middle stage of Foundation Establishment, his strength was close to that of Revolving Radiance cultivators. These Foundation Establishment cultivators were not a threat to him. However, no matter who it was, with so many people following behind him, he would feel somewhat uncomfortable. Moreover, this place was still under the supervision of the sect elders. Murong-yu did not want to make a move here. His figure flashed, and he quickly rushed into the depths of Demon Mountain. As he continued to go deeper, Murong-yu sensitively discovered that the demonic chi was getting denser and denser. Of course, if he did not have a chaotic celestial body, he would not be able to detect these subtle changes. Finally, after going a certain distance, Murong-yu encountered the first demonic beast. Demonic Wolf, the demonic beast in the outermost area of Demon Mountain. It was also one of the lowest level demonic beasts. Its strength was between Foundation Establishment and Revolving Radiance. However, the demonic wolf was very fierce. Generally, a Foundation Establishment demonic wolf was equivalent to a Revolving Radiance cultivator. Generally speaking, wolves were social animals. However, the demonic wolves in Demon Mountain were an exception. They usually walked alone. Even so, it was enough to make people pale. Its body was pitch black, and its eyes flashed with a demonic green light. Its body was huge like a tiger. Its body emitted a fierce and bloody power. At a glance, one could tell that this fellow had killed countless lives. After seeing Murong-yu, the demonic wolf, which was equivalent to a late Foundation Establishment stage cultivator, let out a long howl. Then, its body suddenly arched, and in the next moment, it turned into a black stream of light and pounced towards Murong-yu. During this process, the demonic wolf's two huge wolf claws grabbed the air, as if tearing the void, and fiercely slapped down on Murong-yu's head. A strong, murderous aura hit him in the face, and it was breathtaking. Murong-yu did not doubt that if he was only an ordinary Foundation Establishment stage cultivator, he would not be able to escape at all. He would be killed directly. At this time, Murong-yu finally knew why those people outside Demon Mountain had to form groups to enter Demon Mountain. Bastard, you're courting death. Murong-yu did not use the phoenix spear on his back. Instead, he snorted coldly and stomped his feet on the ground. A huge force was released, and immediately, cracks appeared on the ground, extending into the distance. Murong-yu used the force to soar into the air, and also turned into a stream of light, rushing towards the demonic wolf. Is this guy crazy? He wants to fight the demonic wolf in close combat. When Feng Jun and the others saw this scene, they were stunned. Then they all laughed coldly. In their minds, they could use their physical bodies to fight with demonic beasts. Murong-yu was definitely going to die. In their minds, the bloody scene of Murong-yu being torn to pieces by the demonic wolf appeared. Thinking of that scene, Feng Jun's face revealed a cruel smile. However, very quickly, the smile on their faces froze, and they all stared blankly in front of them. Their mouths were wide open, as if they had seen a ghost. Bang! After a muffled sound, Murong-yu had already punched the demonic wolf's huge claws. A powerful force erupted, and even the void seemed to have been blasted apart. At this time, Feng Jun and the others were shocked to see. After the collision, Murong Yu and the demonic wolf were immediately sent flying by the huge force. How is this possible? This guy's physical body is actually so strong? Feng Jun and the others were shocked, and their faces were full of disbelief. Murong Yu killed Zhu Shi, who was in the revolving reflection stage, but that was under the circumstances of using a weapon. No one knew that Murong Yu's physical body was actually so strong. Chapter 61. With one strike, Murong Yu was sent flying as if he had suffered a heavy blow. His powerful body, which was comparable to a high-grade magic weapon, immediately broke countless huge trees before finally falling to the ground. The demonic wolf, on the other hand, seemed to be even more miserable than Murong Yu. Its huge body was directly sent flying, smashing countless trees. In the end, it even crashed into the ground, causing it to tremble. Oh, the moment the demonic wolf fell to the ground, it was instantly afraid and howled towards the sky. This beast's body was extremely strong, and it was not injured at all. On the contrary, Murong Yu felt that his fist was somewhat numb from the shock. Oh, the demonic wolf roared, and its entire body emitted a black, baleful aura. It turned into a ray of light and pounced towards Murong Yu. Murong Yu sneered in his heart. His body also emitted a black power, and with a stomp, he shattered a huge rock under his feet. Immediately, his entire body was like a goshawk pouncing on its prey as he charged towards the demonic wolf once again. The demonic wolf was indeed one of the most powerful beasts in the outermost area of the Demon Mountain. Its body was like copper skin and iron bones, and it was extremely shocking. However, Murong Yu's body was many times stronger than the demonic wolf's. However, even so, Murong Yu found it difficult to kill the demonic wolf in a short period of time with his bare hands. Moreover, it seemed that Murong Yu did not have the intention to kill the demonic wolf immediately. Bang! 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 The battle between the two was extremely tragic. The demonic wolf was constantly sent flying, and Murong Yu was sent flying. The power that erupted from the great battle destroyed the nearby forest into a mess. Countless large trees that required a few people to wrap their arms around were destroyed by the two of them. At this moment, the demonic wolf's originally black and shiny fur had turned into patches. It was about to become a bald wolf. As for Murong Yu, he was also in a very sorry state. His original clothes had been torn into pieces and hung on his body. All that was left of his body was a pair of underwear that was still intact. However, even though Murong Yu was in a very sorry state, he still had an excited expression on his face. Boundless fighting spirit was constantly emitted from his body, soaring to the sky. All this time, Murong Yu had only experienced a few battles in his cultivation from immortal to the middle stage of foundation establishment. He had too little combat experience. And this time, Murong Yu was entering the Demon Mountain to train. He had taken a fancy to the opportunities and the various heavenly and earthly treasures that could be found in the Demon Mountain. Those were simply too ethereal. His main purpose for coming here was to fighting against demonic beasts and cultivators. That was his only goal. But now, without using the heavenly dragon's strength, Demon Wolf was actually able to fight Murong Yu to a draw. This made him very excited. In the battle with the Demon Wolf, Murong Yu's various combat skills gradually improved. His aura grew stronger and stronger. Mother Asterisker, this bastard is really strong. Feng Jun, who was secretly watching this scene from behind, had a ferocious expression on his face. The more he discovered Murong Yu's strength, the more unhappy he became. Moreover, the battle between Murong Yu and the Demon Wolf. That was a face-to-face, hand-to-hand fight, with every punch to the flesh. It completely violated their understanding of using flying swords to fight. The battle was fierce. If it weren't for the fact that these two fellows' bodies were extremely abnormal, they would have been smashed into meat paste. The more they watched, the more depressed Feng Jun and the others became. And when they saw Murong Yu's bravery, they unconsciously compared themselves to him. Under such a comparison, they sadly discovered that their bodies couldn't withstand a single blow. They couldn't be compared to Murong Yu at all. For a moment, everyone looked at Murong Yu with cold eyes. A look called resentment flashed in their eyes. Jealousy. Bang! Murong Yu wasn't paying attention and was ruthlessly slapped on the chest by the demon wolf. The sharp wolf claws immediately left a few bloody marks on his chest. The immense power caused Murong Yu's blood and chi to churn. It could even cut through a high-grade magic weapon's body. One could imagine how terrifying the demon wolf's claws were. What Murong Yu didn't know was that the demon wolf's claws were a good material for refining weapons. They were extremely hard. Chi, 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 chi. Just as Murong Yu was sent flying, 5 sharp sounds came from a hidden place not far behind him. Then, 5 streams of light of different colors appeared. Murong Yu narrowed his eyes slightly. He had already seen the 5 streams of light clearly, 5 flying swords. The 4 flying swords were only low-grade magic weapons and posed no threat to Murong Yu. However, one of the flying swords made Murong Yu frown slightly. This was because Murong Yu sensed that the flying sword seemed to be a high-grade magic weapon. A high-grade magic weapon. Murong Yu's body was also a high-grade magic weapon. Logically speaking, he shouldn't be afraid of the flying sword. However, no one would be so stupid as to let their body meet the opponent's flying sword head-on. Sure enough, he's made a move. He's really courting death. A cold killing intent flashed across Murong Yu's brows. He grabbed the phoenix spear with a backhand grip. Pouring power into it, he stabbed the spear at the high-grade magic weapon that was quickly strangling towards him. However, he ignored the other 4 flying swords. Ding! The long spear directly pierced the tip of the high-grade flying sword, and a powerful force erupted. The high-grade flying sword was actually sent flying by the bombardment. The moment the long spear and the high-grade magic weapon collided, the other 4 flying swords had already pierced into 4 places on Murong Yu's body. Die! Seeing that their magic weapons were actually effective, they ruthlessly stabbed into Murong Yu's body. The 4 Foundation Establishment stage cultivators couldn't help but cheer and rush out from their hiding places. Idiots! Murong Yu's eyes revealed a look of disdain. He freed his left hand and directly grabbed the 4 low-grade magic weapons. Then power burst forth. Crack! Crack! The 4 low-grade magic weapons emitted a sound that made one's teeth ache. They were actually directly grabbed by Murong Yu and turned into scrap metal. Puff! The moment the flying swords were destroyed, the 4 Foundation Establishment stage cultivators fiercely spat out a mouthful of blood. Their minds were already severely injured. You dare to make a move, all of you can go to hell. Murong Yu roared with a murderous aura. The long spear in his hand shook, and with a backhand grip, he sent the demonic wolf that was pouncing from behind flying. At the same time, he turned into a stream of light and rushed towards Feng Jun and the others to kill. With a sweep of the long spear, the demonic wolf that weighed more than 1,000 pounds was immediately sent flying like a broken rag. As for Murong Yu, he turned into a streak of light and charged towards Feng Jun and the others. Murong Yu's speed wasn't very fast, but in the Foundation Establishment stage, his speed was still considered good. Coupled with his full speed now, with a swoosh, Murong Yu had already rushed in front of the few Foundation Establishment stage disciples who were beside themselves with joy. With a shake of the long spear, like a black hidden dragon, it broke through countless space and time obstacles and instantly appeared in front of a late Foundation Establishment stage disciple. Puff! This Foundation Establishment stage disciple was still excited about his flying sword piercing Murong Yu. However, all of a sudden, he saw a black spearhead thrusting towards him at lightning speed. Immediately, he was shocked. However, the moment he reacted, he felt a sharp pain in his heart. Looking down, he found that Murong Yu's black spear had already pierced through his heart. You actually killed me? This disciple looked at Murong Yu with a face of shock and disbelief. The latter only snorted coldly. With a shake of the long spear, this disciple was directly shattered into pieces. Then, Muronyu took a step forward. The long spear in his hand flashed with a black light, and with a sweep of 1,000 soldiers. Bang! 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 The three late Foundation establishment stage disciples reacted, but they had no time to escape and were directly smashed by Murongyu's spear. In the end, only Feng Jun was left staring blankly at Murongyu. The tip of Murongyu's long spear was already on Feng Jun's forehead. Feeling Murongyu's naked, undisguised killing intent. Seeing Murongyu's cold-blooded and heartless scene, Feng Jun's head was instantly covered in cold sweat. My grandfather is the leader of this team, Elder Feng. You can't kill me. If you kill me, my grandfather will be the first to know, and then you will definitely die. Although Feng Jun was terrified, he still brought out Elder Feng. A cold light flashed across Murongyu's eyebrows, and he sneered, "Are you threatening me? I forgot to tell you, I hate it when people threaten me." As he spoke, the long spear directly pierced Feng Jun's head, killing him directly. For people who wanted to kill him, Murongyu would never be lenient. After all, the other party wanted to kill him. Just now, he was fighting with the demon wolf, and Feng Jun and the others were sneak attacking from behind. Or if it was an ordinary person, even if it was a cultivator in the revolving reflection stage, he would have been directly killed by them. Ayo! Being swept away by Murongyu's spear, the demon wolf was very angry. With a loud roar, it pounced towards Murongyu. "Beast!" Murongyu growled, and the void above his head immediately circled 20 coiling dragons. Then, under Murongyu's control, the power of the 20 coiling dragons seemed to be poured into the long spear, and then the spear fiercely stabbed out. Ayo! The demonic wolf let out a mournful cry as its huge body was sent flying. However, the difference this time was that the demon wolf's entire head had been smashed. One could imagine how terrifying Murongyu's power was. In fact, the coiling dragons were not two low-level dragons, and the power they possessed was already extremely terrifying. It should be known that just the power of the flood dragon could make Murongyu shatter a 10,000-kilogram boulder with a punch, and the power of the coiling dragons could already shatter a small mountain with a punch. However, the demon wolf was also a cultivator, and its strength was also powerful. If it was an ordinary cultivator in the late stage of the Foundation establishment stage, it would really be difficult to deal with it. On a mountain peak outside the Demon Mountain, the two elders leading Zushinzong were sitting cross-legged on the mountain peak, looking at the Demon Mountain in front of them that was lingering with demonic chi. Suddenly, Elder Feng's expression changed fiercely. With a thought, he took out a token that looked like a jade slip. However, the moment this token appeared, it shattered. Seeing that the token had been shattered, Elder Feng's eyes instantly turned red, and a cold, murderous intent swept out like a flash flood, covering the sky and the earth, rushing straight to the sky. Chapter 62. Elder Lin, who was sitting opposite him, was the first to bear the brunt. He was caught off guard and was actually pushed back a few steps by Elder Feng's soaring, killing intent. Elder Lin was furious and shouted angrily, "Feng Ningbo, what are you doing?" After Elder Lin shouted angrily, he realized that Elder Feng didn't do anything. Elder Feng didn't even look at him and only stared at the broken token in his hand. Elder Lin's eyes narrowed when he saw the token. As an elder of Zushinzong, he naturally knew what this token represented. This was the life and death token. What was the life and death token? In fact, there was nothing special about this life and death token. When a cultivator was alive, as long as a strand of spiritual will was injected into it, when the cultivator met with an unexpected death, the spiritual will in the token would naturally dissipate and the token would shatter. This was the life and death token. Seeing the broken token in Feng Ningbo's hand, Elder Lin instantly understood. This token must be Feng Jun's. After all, many of the Foundation establishment stage cultivators in the Demon Mountain weren't qualified to have a life and death token. In Zushinzong, Only the important figures, their descendants, or the powerful disciples of the sect, such as the core disciples, would have a life and death token. Looking at Elder Feng's expression, Elder Lin was afraid that Feng Jun had met with a mishap. Feng Ningbo, calm down. The Demon Mountain trial is full of danger. Don't you know that it's normal for a few people to die? Lin Zhilong shouted coldly. In the outer area of the Demon Mountain, there are no demonic beasts that can kill Feng Jun. Feng Ningbo stood up and left a sentence with a murderous look. Then his body swayed and disappeared from the spot. Lin Zhilong's face turned gloomy, and he followed closely behind. Not long later, the two elders of Zhushenzong appeared at the scene where Feng Jun and the rest were killed. The scene was a mess, and the ground within a few thousand meters was destroyed. It was obvious that a huge battle had happened. Feng Jun and the rest's corpses were lying on the ground. This was especially true for Feng Jun, whose entire head had been blown apart. If it weren't for his clothes, it would have been easy to recognize him. Otherwise, his identity wouldn't have been known. Who is it? Who is it? Feng Ningbo roared at the sky with a murderous look. Looking at the crazy Feng Ningbo, Lin Zhilong checked the scene with a gloomy face. Soon, he discovered that apart from the corpses of Feng Jun and the other four, there was also the corpse of a demonic wolf nearby. Just like Feng Jun, this demon wolf's head had already been blown apart. Who is so powerful? Lin Zhilong frowned as he looked at the unscathed body of the demon wolf. Of course, Lin Zhilong could easily crush thousands of demonic wolves that were equivalent to Foundation Establishment Stage demonic beasts. However, those who entered this place were Foundation Establishment Stage cultivators, who was strong enough to directly blow up the head of the demonic wolf. One demonic wolf, for late Foundation Establishment cultivators, and one early Foundation Establishment cultivator. All of them had died here. Moreover, looking at the style, it was definitely done by the same person. Feng Ningbo and Lin Zhilong immediately guessed what had happened from the traces here. Who is it? The anger in Feng Ningbo's heart almost made him spit fire. Endless murderous intent filled the air. It was very terrifying. He picked up Feng Jun's high-grade flying sword and said with a gloomy face, "This is the vicinity of Zhushenzong. Who killed him?" Obviously, this was still the outermost area of the Demon Mountain. It was impossible for disciples from other sects to pass by. Moreover, Feng Jun's flying sword was a high-grade flying sword. This murderer actually didn't want this high-grade flying sword after killing them. It was obvious that he was afraid of exposing his identity one day. This was Feng Ningbo's speculation. Therefore, they were even more certain that it was someone from Zhushenzong who killed Feng Jun. However, they didn't know that the reason why Murong didn't want this high-grade flying sword was not because he was afraid of exposing his identity. But, in fact, Murong didn't care about this high-grade flying sword at all. Who asked him to be rich? Hichu Luoshu had a lot of magic treasures and divine weapons. Moreover, they were all spiritual weapons. Think about it. If a person had many spiritual weapons, how could he still care about a flying sword, even if it was a high-grade flying sword? However, Murong didn't expect that Feng Ningbo and Feng Ningbo would speculate that he was Zhushenzong's disciple just from the mess of the scene. It was Zhushenzong's disciple who killed Feng Jun. This made Feng Ningbo very angry, and his murderous intent became even more fierce. Immediately, he was about to explode. He wanted to chase after and kill this person. Lin Zhilong frowned slightly, and his face darkened. Feng Ningbo, I warn you not to be impulsive. Otherwise, you'll have to bear the consequences if you ruin the sect's big event. Moreover, it's normal for a few people to die in the trial. In fact, Lin Zhilong was somewhat disdainful. After Feng Ningbo entered here, he didn't care about the deaths of the other disciples. He didn't even see them. His eyes were full of his grandson. His grandson was human, but the others weren't. Only his grandson was precious. He couldn't be killed. Lin Zhilong's eyes were cold as he looked at Feng Ningbo indifferently. Feng Ningbo was stunned. Then he retracted his murderous intent and dealt with Feng Jun's body with a gloomy face. Then he rose into the air and flew back. You'd better not die in the Demon Mountain. Otherwise, once I find out, I'll turn you into ashes. Feng Ningbo's murderous intent became even fiercer. Murong didn't know anything that happened. At this time, he had already rushed into the depths of the Demon Mountain's outermost area. Along the way, he encountered more and more monsters. However, Murong didn't stop there. He spent a lot of time fighting the demonic beasts. After all, after the battle with the demon wolf, his combat experience had increased. These monsters were only slightly stronger than the demon wolf. Fighting with them couldn't increase Murong's strength. Therefore, whenever he encountered these monsters, he would either kill them with a spear or a punch. It was a clean kill, because they had wasted a lot of time in the beginning. There were already many people in front of Murong. Along the way, Murong met many of Zushenzong's disciples. Seeing Murong, these disciples' eyes lit up. They were all Murong's strong disciples and wanted to invite Murong to join their ranks. However, they were all rejected by Murong. Suddenly, a shrill scream came from the depths of the forest, followed by the sound of fierce fighting. Too many of these things happened in the forest. Murong was already used to it. However, this time, the scream came from in front of Murong. Not long after, Murong's front suddenly opened up. He saw that in front of him, there were two groups of people confronting each other. Looking at their clothes, one side was Zushenzong's disciples. Murong did not have any impression of the other side. 4 female Zushenzong's disciples in the Foundation establishment stage were looking at the disciples of other sects surrounding them in panic. Each of their faces were pale and filled with anger and fear. On the other side, there were 10 cultivators, all of whom were in the late stage of the Foundation establishment stage. The leader was a bald man with a face full of pockmarks. In addition to them, there were several corpses lying on the ground. Looking at their attire, they were all Zushenzong's disciples. Seeing this, Murong didn't need anyone to tell him what happened. Sure enough, the pockmarked bald man's eyes flashed with a lewd light. He kept looking at the 4 female Zushenzong's disciples and kept licking his lips. He looked very disgusting. Murong frowned slightly. He did not stand up. He just looked at those people with disgust. He had encountered this kind of thing more than once or twice. Robbery. In fact, Murong had been robbed by other sects several times. However, they were all killed by Murong. Hand over all your storage bags and magic tools and serve us. If you serve us well, we will let you go. Otherwise, they will be your examples. The bald man said with a lewd smile. He pointed at the corpses on the ground and said, "Boom!" Hearing the bald man's words, his fellow apprentices immediately burst into laughter. Every one of them was looking at the 4 female disciples with obscene eyes. The 4 female disciples were so angry that their faces turned pale. They looked at the bald man with murderous intent and said angrily, "Kill us if you want. We would rather die than submit." A white-robed female disciple said with a trembling body, "You Chinji sect killed so many of our people. Do you want to start a war between our sects? We Zushenzong will not let you go." A red-robed female said angrily, "Haha, Zushenzong, I am so scared." The pockmarked bald man laughed sinisterly. He looked at the 4 women with murderous intent and said, "As long as we kill you, who will know that we killed you?" The bald man laughed sinisterly and waved his hand. "Brothers, do it. Don't kill them. Capture them and have some fun with them first." Ayo, ayo. A few Foundation establishment late-stage Tianji sect disciples howled and rushed towards the 4 women. "Sisters, let's fight it out with them. We would rather die than submit." The white-robed female disciple cried out, "How dare you bully us Zushenzong in broad daylight?" At this moment, a voice came from the side. Then, a young man with a black spear on his back slowly walked out from the forest. He looked at the Tianji sect disciples coldly. Originally, Murong did not want to get involved in these trivial matters. However, these people from the Tianji sect were too hateful. Murong hated this kind of thing the most, so he had no choice but to step forward. Murong had no choice but to step forward. Hearing Murong's words, the Tianji sect and the 4 female disciples from Zushenzong were shocked. However, the difference was that while the Tianji sect was shocked, the Zhuxianzong female disciples were pleasantly surprised. This was because someone who was willing to come out at this time would definitely have the ability to stop the Tianji sect. They naturally thought that if someone dared to come out at this time, they would not dare to come out without a certain level of strength. Everyone looked over at the first moment, and then they were stunned. This was because they could see that Murong Yu was only at the foundation establishment middle stage. Chapter 63. When Zhuxianzong and the other 3 female cultivators saw Murong Yu, they were pleasantly surprised. This was because they saw that Murong Yu was wearing Zhuxianzong's clothes. However, they were able to see through Murong Yu's cultivation, which instantly turned the glimmer of hope in their hearts into disappointment. He was only in the middle stage of foundation establishment. How could he be a match for the Fecta sect? One had to know that the acne-faced bald man's group were all in the late stage of foundation establishment. Enai Tong was the female cultivator in white. Her cultivation was in the late stage of foundation establishment. The instant she saw Murong Yu, her brows furrowed. Junior brother, they're very strong. You're not their match. Quickly leave this place. Hearing this, Murong Yu's indifferent eyes flashed, and he couldn't help but look at Enai Tong. From Enai Tong's behavior and standing position, this woman was the leader of the group. Originally, Murong Yu had no choice but to come out because the acne-faced bald man and his group were too hateful. However, he didn't expect to meet such an interesting female cultivator. In this world where strength was everything, the fist was everything, the majority of people were heartless and cold. If it was an ordinary person who encountered such a situation, even if it was only a Xiantian cultivator, they wouldn't say anything to warn the other party to leave. In fact, the majority of people would use the appearance of others to distract the enemy so that they could escape. At this time, a woman like Enai Tong appeared. It was truly incredible. Murong Yu looked at the other party with a trace of admiration. I was wondering who it was. So it's just an ant in the middle stage of foundation establishment. Since you're here, don't think of leaving. The acne-faced bald man's eyes flashed with killing intent as he looked at Murong Yu. At the same time, the other disciples of the Fecta sect also looked at Murong Yu with disdain. They thought that an expert had come, at least in the late stage of foundation establishment. However, they didn't expect that this guy was only in the middle stage of foundation establishment. In the eyes of late-stage foundation establishment cultivators like them, mid-stage foundation establishment cultivators couldn't even withstand a single blow. Therefore, they did not see Murong Yu as a threat at all. Junior brother, please leave quickly. Enai Tong's face turned dark with anxiety between her brows. Murong Yu only smiled indifferently and said, I'm afraid these people won't let me do as I wish. Moreover, since I came out, why would I leave again? These scum from the Fecta sect are nothing but a bunch of trash. Senior sister, you don't have to worry. You're courting death. The cultivators from the Tianji sect roared furiously. One of them even released a flying sword, which swiftly shot towards Murong Yu. Clang! At this moment, Enai Tong made her move and released her flying sword to block the Tianji cultivator's flying sword. In her opinion, Murong Yu, who was only at the mid-foundation establishment realm, would definitely not be able to withstand the attacks from the Fecta sect. Could you be Murong Yu? At this moment, the red-robed girl suddenly spoke. Ever since Murong Yu came out, this girl had been looking at Murong Yu with a strange gaze. Murong Yu. Hearing the red-robed girl's words, Enai Tong and the other 2 were slightly shocked. They had heard of Murong Yu's great name before. He was able to kill Zhu Shi, who was at the revolving reflection realm, with his foundation establishment realm cultivation. Murong Yu was stunned. He looked at the red-robed girl and asked doubtfully, You know me? Murong Yu didn't have any impression of him. However, he didn't know that his name had already spread throughout Zhuxianzong. I don't know you, but I've heard of you. I heard that you can fly with a spear. The red-robed girl pointed at the spear on Murong Yu's back and said. Murong Yu came to a realization. He was probably the only person in the entire cultivation realm who could fly with a spear. He was a very good person. Damn it, kill this brat. Seeing that Murong Yu and the others had ignored him, the pockmarked bald man shouted angrily. He immediately controlled his flying sword and charged towards Murong Yu. At the same time, the other people from the Fectus sect also made their move. In an instant, countless sword lights flew out from the void and covered the sky as they charged towards Murong Yu and Ai Tong and the others. The momentum was vast and extremely shocking. After hearing Murong Yu admit his identity, and Ai Tong and the other two instinctively heaved a sigh of relief. However, at this moment, the other party made his move. You're courting death. Murong Yu grabbed the spear with a flip of his hand and let out a low roar. Immediately, 20 black, coiled dragon phantoms appeared above his head. They bared their fangs and brandished their claws, emitting an extremely frightening pressure. The power of 20 coiling dragons. Seeing this scene, the people from the Fectus sect were shocked. Then, one by one, they let out a loud roar, and numerous illusory figures of Pan Chi hovered above their heads. In an instant, the entire void was filled with coiling dragons of various colors. Waves of incomparably terrifying pressure were released, shooting straight into the sky. The spear danced like a black divine dragon. With just a single spear, it had already sent the pockmarked bald man's flying sword flying. Then, Murong Yu's figure swayed as he turned into a stream of light and charged forward. With a shake of the spear, he immediately killed a Foundation Establishment Stage disciple from the Fectus sect. Kill! Right at this moment, an Ai Tong barked and made her move. A billion coiling dragons circled above Ai Tong's head as an extremely powerful aura was released from her body. It was earth-shattering. The flying sword drew a streak of sword light in the void and directly knocked away a flying sword that was coming at him. Then, the flying sword drew a semicircle and attacked a Fectus sect disciple. Puffed. Fresh blood spurted out like a fountain as a head flew high into the sky. Ai Tong had killed a cultivator of the same level as her. When Murong Yu saw the 11 coiling dragons above Ai Tong's head, a trace of astonishment appeared in his eyes. However, his movements were not slow. Stepping on the 4 steps of the flying cloud, Murong Yu's figure turned into a stream of light as he weaved through the Fecta sect disciples. The phoenix spear in his hand seemed to have turned into a soul-chasing spear that would kill anyone who touched it. The difference between the power of 20 coiling dragons and the power of 10 coiling dragons was like heaven and earth. Murong Yu could easily kill revolving reflection stage cultivators, let alone these late Foundation Establishment Stage cultivators. In just a few breaths of time, Murong Yu had already killed 8 Fectus sect disciples. As for the other 2, one was killed by Ai Tong while the other was killed by Zhushenzong and the other 3 women. The situation changed in an instant. The originally aggressive Fecta sect disciples were now slaughtered by Murong Yu alone. 10 late Foundation Establishment Stage Fecta sect disciples were all killed. Not a single one was left. 8 of them were directly killed by Murong Yu. Without a doubt, Murong Yu's formidable strength had been displayed. Ai Tong and the other 3 women stared blankly at Murong Yu. Especially Ai Tong, the only late Foundation Establishment Stage cultivator, her face was filled with shock. Previously, she had heard that Murong Yu was powerful and killed the revolving reflection stage Zhu Shi with a single spear. However, she had never seen it with her own eyes. But today, she saw it with her own eyes. Murong Yu was only a middle Foundation Establishment Stage cultivator, while she was a late Foundation Establishment Stage cultivator. Murong Yu had already killed 8 of the Tianji sect disciples by the time he killed one of their disciples. In fact, if it weren't for Murong Yu's overwhelming strength, the remaining Fectus sect disciple would have been killed by the red-clothed woman and the others due to his slow reaction time. Otherwise, he would have been stabbed to death by Murong Yu's spear. They're all dead. The 4 women stared blankly at Murong Yu with strange splendor in their eyes. Murong Yu frowned slightly and said indifferently, "They've already been killed. Let's quickly leave this place. I'm afraid that there will be more people coming here." Before he finished speaking, Murong-yu turned around and walked towards the depths of the demon mountain. Murong-yu, thank you. Enai Tong called out to Murong-yu and thanked him. Murong-yu nodded non-committally and continued forward without stopping. In his view, although they were both Zushinzang's disciples, they were just strangers who met by chance. There was no need for them to have a deep relationship. Furthermore, Murong-yu's purpose in coming to the Demon Mountain was to train, battle, and raise his cultivation. Furthermore, after sensing the strangeness of the Demon Mountain, Murong-yu wanted to explore the depths of the Demon Mountain. After all, the primal energy here was so dense. It would be strange if there was nothing special about it. The red-robed woman looked at Murong-yu and her figure flashed. Suddenly, she rushed to the front of a Fectus sect disciple's corpse and reached out to grab the corpse's storage pouch. Her figure constantly flashed as she took the storage pouches one by one and placed them in her storage pouch along with the flying swords. I'm rich. The red-robed woman's eyes sparkled with joy, seeing the red-robed woman's appearance. Enai Tong and the others were speechless. This money-grubber woman. Enai Tong and the others were speechless, but they did not stop the red-robed woman. Murong-yu kept walking. Suddenly, he stopped and said in a deep voice, "Why are you following me?" Not far behind, Enai Tong and the others walked out. Enai Tong smiled and said, "The Demon Mountain is too dangerous. Our strength is limited, and junior brother Murong is so strong. We can only... I'm going to the depths of the Demon Mountain. I can't even protect myself with my strength, let alone protect you guys. Let's go back." Murong-yu said in a deep voice. The depths of the Demon Mountain? Enai Tong and the others were shocked. One must know that this was the outermost area of the Demon Mountain, and it was already so dangerous. The depths of the Demon Mountain? That was a place that even Tribulation Passing Stage cultivators did not dare to enter. That's all I have to say. If you guys continue to follow me, I won't be able to protect you if there's any danger. Murong-yu said in a deep voice. These four women had been following him for half a day, which made him speechless. It was a fact that there was danger. More importantly, Murong-yu did not want them to follow him. After all, with outsiders by his side, it would be difficult for him to use his trump card if he encountered any danger. If they were outsiders, he could just kill them. But Enai Tong and the others were from the same sect. Furthermore, Murong-yu did not have the habit of killing the innocent. Chapter 64. Senior Sister, what should we do? The three girls looked at Enai Tong and asked. Enai Tong gritted her teeth. With our strength, if we meet disciples from other sects, I'm afraid we will die. Follow him. As she spoke, Enai Tong took the lead to follow. Immediately after, the other three girls followed without hesitation. It was as if Murong-yu's strength could really protect them. In fact, they really followed the right person. In the following half a month, they met more and more powerful demonic beasts, as well as disciples from other sections. They were all Foundation Establishment Stage disciples, and some of them did not have any thoughts about Murong-yu's group. But once someone came looking for trouble like the disciples from the Tianji sect, Murong-yu would immediately take action. Swift and decisive, ruthless and decisive in killing. Murong-yu would always be the first to take action against disciples from other sects who had evil intentions. Moreover, he would immediately kill them. In half a month, they killed 7 to 8 waves of disciples from other sects, and at least 10 of them were killed by Murong-yu. Notorious for his ruthlessness, Murong-yu's decisiveness and ruthlessness shocked Enai Tong and the other girls. But they did not dislike Murong-yu's ruthlessness. After all, in the cultivation world, strength was respected. The weak were prey to the strong, and human lives were like grass. However, as they went deeper, the demonic beasts they met became more and more powerful. Even with Murong-yu's strength, it became more and more difficult. In fact, it was because of the 4 girls that Murong-yu did not reveal his full strength. Otherwise, killing a revolving reflection stage demonic beast would not take much effort. On the other hand, the red-clothed girl looked at Murong-yu with splendor in her eyes and muttered in her heart, "We're rich, we're rich." Along the way, no matter if it was the disciples from other sects or the demonic beasts they killed, Murong Yu was not interested in their possessions, and all of these were taken away by the money-grubbing, red-clothed girl. This made her exclaim that following Murong Yu was the best choice. Rumble. All of a sudden, the demon mountain, which was already shrouded in demonic chi, instantly turned dark, as if it was day and night. Enormous dark clouds quickly gathered above the demon mountain. Waves of boundless might of the heavens and earth were emitted from the sky above the demon mountain. It was extremely terrifying. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Perhaps it was because they felt the terrifying heavenly might descending from the sky. The demonic beasts in the outer perimeter of the Devil Mountain were all frightened and fled back. For a moment, there were no traces of demonic beasts in the outer perimeter of the Devil Mountain. If a supreme expert was outside of the mountain, they would see that the entire mountain was covered by thick dark clouds. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. Endless heavenly might was emitted from these dark clouds, intimidating the outside world. Tribulation clouds. If someone saw these boundless dark clouds, they would immediately recognize them as tribulation clouds. However, this tribulation cloud was simply too vast. It covered a large area of the Demon Mountain. It was many times bigger than the tribulation clouds of ordinary tribulation transcendence cultivators. As for power, that would be even more terrifying. The tribulation clouds above the Demon Mountain became thicker and thicker. The endless heavenly might suppressed the entire Demon Mountain into silence. Regardless of whether it was the powerful demonic beasts or the human cultivators who were training inside, they were all trembling from the terrifying heavenly might. What's that? At this moment, the Demon Mountain that was shrouded in demonic chi all day long seemed to be torn apart by the heavenly might and gradually faded. Not long after, the people inside the Demon Mountain could already see through the endless Demon Mountain and see the endless tribulation clouds above the Demon Mountain. Someone is undergoing tribulation. Murong Yu's eyes shone brightly as he looked at the endless void. There was a hint of excitement in his voice. For ordinary cultivators, they knew about tribulation transcendence, but they rarely had the chance to see it with their own eyes. This was because they would only undergo tribulation in the later stages of the tribulation transcendence realm. However, cultivators at that stage would always find a remote place to undergo tribulation. While they were afraid that their enemies would cause trouble, they also didn't want others to see them undergoing tribulation. Therefore, ordinary cultivators wouldn't be able to see others undergoing tribulation. However, not long ago, Murong Yu had experienced a heavenly tribulation. Although the power of the heavenly tribulation couldn't be compared to that of the later stages of the tribulation transcendence realm. However, he was someone who had experienced a heavenly tribulation. Therefore, when Murong Yu saw the tribulation clouds in the void, he instantly reacted and knew that someone was undergoing tribulation. Tribulation transcendence. And I Tong and the other three girls looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. For Foundation establishment cultivators like them, the tribulation transcendence realm was too far away. In fact, they didn't even know if they would have the chance to cultivate to the tribulation transcendence realm in their lifetime. Boom! A bolt of lightning struck down from the void. With a crack, a mountain that was tens of thousands of meters tall in the depths of the Demon Mountain was directly smashed into powder. Apart from that, the heavenly might became even more terrifying and intimidated thousands of worlds. Countless lives trembled under the heavenly tribulation as they couldn't resist such heavenly might. At this moment, even Murong Yu felt a boundless pressure descending from the heavens. It was as if the pressure was trying to force him to submit. It was the heavenly might. Murong Yu had already experienced a heavenly tribulation, but he still felt it, let alone I Tong and the others who had never experienced heavenly might before. At this moment, the four of them were already prostrating on the ground due to the heavenly might that was everywhere. All of them had terrified expressions on their faces. However, when they saw Murong Yu, who was still standing proudly between the heavens and earth, they were shocked. All of them were shocked by Murong Yu's strength. This person is so powerful that he can even resist the heavenly might. And I Tong thought in shock. At the same time, the other Foundation establishment cultivators of the 10 great sects all submitted to the heavenly might. Murong Yu, the person undergoing the heavenly tribulation, is a ferocious person. He has such a terrifying heavenly might even before undergoing the heavenly tribulation. If you can see this ferocious person undergoing the heavenly tribulation, it will be greatly beneficial for you in the future. Hichu communicated with Murong Yu. Murong Yu nodded his head. He had the intention to go in and take a look. Furthermore, he knew that under the heavenly might of the heavenly tribulation, all the demonic beasts on the Demon Mountain had submitted to the heavenly might. He could enter the Demon Mountain without any obstructions. The 4 of you stay here. I'll go take a look, Murong Yu said. Then, he flew on his spear kinesis flight and turned into a streak of light as he flew towards the depths of the Demon Mountain. The boundless heavenly might suppressed the Demon Mountain. The boundless heavenly might even crossed the Demon Mountain and spread to the world in all directions. Under the heavenly tribulation clouds above the Demon Mountain, the boundless heavenly might quickly enveloped the entire cultivation world. Of course, this heavenly might was just a remnant of the heavenly might. Only powerful cultivators could discover this terrifying remnant of the heavenly might. In an instant, countless experts in the cultivation world were awakened. Waves of ocean-like divine senses tore through the void and probed towards the Demon Mountain from all directions. Who's undergoing the heavenly tribulation? Why is it so terrifying? In an instant, countless cultivators were shocked. However, these divine senses, regardless of whether they belong to transcending tribulation stage or transformation stage cultivators, when their divine senses discovered that the person undergoing the heavenly tribulation was in the depths of the Demon Mountain, these divine senses all stopped outside the Demon Mountain. They didn't dare to enter the Demon Mountain. There were transformation stage cultivators here who were close to becoming half immortals. Yet, they didn't dare to barge into the Demon Mountain. One could imagine how terrifying the depths of the Demon Mountain were. Swish, swish, swish. Streaks of light flew up from every corner of the cultivation world and quickly flew in the direction of the Devil Mountain. Clearly, those experts who were secretly cultivating had been alarmed. Not long after, countless experts with powerful cultivation bases appeared outside the Devil Mountain. These were all old monsters. Some cultivators who thought that they had ascended or died were attracted by this ferocious person in the depths of the Demon Mountain. Almost all the ferocious people were alarmed. One could imagine how terrifying the cultivator undergoing the heavenly tribulation in the depths of the Demon Mountain was. Murong Yu flew on his spear kinesis flight in the sky above the Demon Mountain. He was as fast as a stream of light. Under the awe of the heavenly tribulation, no demonic beasts made a move. However, the Demon Mountain was after all 1,000,000 miles wide. Even Murong Yu was about 400,000 to 500,000 miles away from the depths of the Demon Mountain. For transcending tribulation stage or transformation stage cultivators, this distance was nothing to them. However, Murong Yu's speed. Hichu, is there any way to increase my speed? Murong Yu was anxious. With his current speed, by the time he reached the Demon Mountain, the other party would have already completed the heavenly tribulation. What was there to see? Hichu Luoshu can increase my speed. However, I need to burn some pills. Hichu said indifferently. Without thinking, Murong Yu directly entered the Hichu Luoshu world. Burn some pills, Murong Yu said anxiously. Hichu was not a good-for-nothing. He knew how Murong Yu felt. Immediately, he stretched out his hand and grabbed 100,000 recovery pills. Then, under his control, the 100,000 recovery pills were burned. Boom! 100,000 recovery pills burned at the same time. One could imagine how much spiritual chi it contained. Murong Yu felt his body tremble. He extended his divine perception and immediately found that the surrounding scenery was moving backward rapidly. This speed was thousands of times faster than his spear kinesis flight. However, this was in exchange for burning pills. The price to pay for this speed was too high. That was 100,000 origin recovery pills. It should be known that the Foundation establishment cultivators of the Void Sky sect were only given 5 origin recovery pills every month. Murongyu's increase in speed directly burned 1,600 recovery pills that Foundation establishment stage cultivators received every year. However, Murongyu did not have the time to feel the pain. He would not feel the pain. Not to mention the large number of recovery pills and various other pills in the Hichu Luo Shu. Even if there were not so many, Murongyu would not feel the pain. After all, pills were meant to be consumed. Now that he had burned 100,000 pills, as long as he could reach the depths of the Demon Mountain in time to see the scene of the fierce person undergoing the heavenly tribulation, it would definitely be beneficial to Murongyu. Chapter 65. Watching someone else transcend the tribulation was an incomparably valuable experience. In fact, to Murongyu, there were only advantages and no disadvantages in certain aspects. Moreover, there were too many pills in the Hichu Luoshu world. 100,000 recovery pills? It was just a drop in the ocean, the tip of the iceberg. Of course, this was what Murongyu thought. In the near future, Murongyu would discover that no matter how many pills there were in the Hichu Luoshu world, there would not be enough. In fact, at some point in time, he would become a pauper and work hard in the cultivation world for the sake of recovery pills. Let's not talk about this for now. Speaking of which, after Murongyu burned 100,000 origin recovery pills, his Hitu and Luoshu's world instantly improved. In just half a day, he crossed several 100,000 li and rushed into the depths of the Demon Mountain. At this time, the tribulation clouds in the void were denser than before, and the heavenly might was even more terrifying. The tribulation lightning had yet to descend. The person transcending the tribulation must be a fierce person. The heavenly tribulation has been brewing for so long and has yet to descend. Although Hichu had been crippled, it was after all an artifact spirit that had followed war god Zhao Yun for countless years. It had a deep understanding of these aspects. The longer the heavenly tribulation brewed, the more powerful it was and the harder it was for the person transcending it. Murongyu knew this basic knowledge. At this time, Murongyu had already walked out of the Hichu Luoshu world. However, as soon as he left the Hichu Luoshu world, a vast heavenly might descended on Murongyu's body. An incomparably terrifying pressure pressed down from all directions. Murongyu was shocked, and his expression changed drastically in an instant. At this moment, he felt that his body, which had reached the level of a high-grade magic artifact, could not withstand such a terrifying power under the endless heavenly might. It was on the verge of collapse, and small cracks appeared like porcelain. It looked like it was about to shatter. The boundless heavenly might pressured Murongyu so much that even his soul was trembling. We've gone too far. Murongyu was shocked. He never thought that the might of this heavenly tribulation would be so terrifying. In fact, this was the 49 heavenly tribulations at the late stage of the crossing tribulation stage, which was already very powerful. Even the person undergoing the tribulation would find it hard to bear the terrifying heavenly might, let alone Murongyu, who was only at the middle stage of the Foundation establishment realm. Murongyu's body did not shatter immediately. It was already extremely rare for him to be destroyed. After all, even the crossing calamity stage demonic beasts had retreated far away in the depths of the Devil Mountain. Shocked, Murongyu was about to enter the Hichu Luoshu world. However, at this moment, an invisible force was applied to his body. At this moment, Murongyu suddenly felt that the heavenly might pressing down on him had shrunk countless times in an instant. Although it still made it difficult for Murongyu to breathe, it was no longer lethal to him. Murongyu's heart moved. He knew that Hichu had helped him. However, What puzzled him was that Hichu, who was already beaten to a pulp, had such a powerful force. I can even block the heavenly tribulation of a god easily, let alone this small one. Hichu's disdainful voice sounded in Murongyu's ears. There was no lack of pride in his tone, although he was now beaten to a pulp and was almost beaten to death. As long as the heavenly tribulation did not target them, the pressure of the heavenly tribulation alone could not do anything to him. On a mountain a few miles away from Murongyu, a tall figure stood proudly with his hands behind his back. He had the aura of a king looking down on the world. Obviously, it was this man who was about to undergo the heavenly tribulation. Black gas lingered around his body. A set of black armor emitted a bright light, flowing with traces of divine light, draped over this person's body. This was a middle-aged man. He raised his head and looked into the depths of the endless void. His eyes shone brightly. A ferocious and incomparably powerful aura was emitted from his body. It was like an endless ocean with raging waves. It was extremely terrifying. Boom! At this moment, the thick tribulation clouds in the void exploded. Following that, a huge crack appeared in the middle of the tribulation clouds. A huge beam of golden light shot out from the tribulation clouds, piercing through the endless space. It shot directly into the depths of the demon mountain. The intense golden light was dazzling and blinding. At this moment, it was as if the entire cultivation world was illuminated by this golden light. It was plated with a faint layer of golden light. Hiss, seeing this scene, whether it was Murongyu, the sect masters of the major sects outside the demon mountain, or the old monsters who were cultivating in seclusion, all sucked in a breath of cold air. Who is transcending the heavenly tribulation? Countless tribulation stage and transformation stage experts frowned. The person transcending the heavenly tribulation was in the depths of the demon mountain. Moreover, this heavenly tribulation seemed to be very terrifying. If this person transcended the heavenly tribulation, there would be a top expert in the cultivation world. If such a person appeared in the major sects of the cultivation world, everyone's hearts wouldn't be so heavy. The key point was that this person was from the demon mountain. Was it a demon or a demon? Regardless of whether it was a demon or a demon, it wasn't a good thing for these sections. In an instant, countless experts' faces turned gloomy. They were considering if they should eliminate this person while he was transcending the heavenly tribulation. However, when they thought of how terrifying the depths of the demon mountain were, these people suppressed their restless hearts. The golden light was dazzling. Murongyu narrowed his eyes slightly. However, he still stared at the tribulation clouds in the void. He felt that it was very strange. Why didn't the tribulation clouds descend? One must know that when he was transcending the heavenly tribulation that day, the tribulation lightning directly descended. However, Murongyu soon found out the reason. A large beam of golden light with a radius of a few miles shone in the depths of the demon mountain. It was like a bridge that connected the earth and the immortal world. Just as Murongyu was confused by what he was seeing, the beam of golden light suddenly underwent a change. As if someone was controlling it, the golden light began to distort violently. In just a few breaths of time, this beam of golden light had undergone a drastic change. Stairs. After seeing the change in the golden light, Murongyu couldn't help but blurt out. This was because in front of him, the golden light had completely transformed into a flight of stairs. A flight of golden stairs that connected the earth and the sky. However, what Murongyu didn't know was that this flight of stairs was called the Sky Ascension Stairs. Looking at the golden and majestic flight of stairs that connected the earth and the sky, he felt a little dizzy. He was shocked. For a moment, he just stared at the flight of stairs with his mouth agape. He was speechless for a long time. After a long time, he asked in shock, "What is that?" "The Sky Ascension Stairs," Hichu said indifferently. He was used to this. After all, for those who had gone through the 49 heavenly tribulations or had seen others go through the 49 heavenly tribulations, this was no stranger to them. The heavenly tribulation of the late stage of the tribulation passing stage was the 49 heavenly tribulations. At this time, the heavenly tribulation wasn't just a simple heavenly tribulation. It should be known that after the tribulation passing stage was the transformation stage. The so-called transformation stage was the process of a cultivator's physical body and strength gradually transforming into the physical body and celestial core power of an immortal. The meaning of the flight of stairs was to reach the heavens in a single step. Only by crossing the flight of stairs could one achieve the supreme immortal body and celestial core power. After a brief explanation from Hichu, Murong had a rough understanding of this. Boom! Not long after the flight of stairs appeared, a strong light suddenly exploded at the end of the flight of stairs. The dazzling golden light shot up into the sky. It was extremely dazzling. At the end of the flight of stairs, a huge crack appeared in the void. Then a door slowly took shape. It was a huge, majestic door like the southern heavenly gate appeared in the void. The door that emitted dazzling golden light was tightly shut at this time. This is the immortal door. Before Murong could ask, Hichu explained. Immortal door? Murong frowned slightly. Then he thought of something and said, Immortal door? Could it be the door to the immortal world? Why would it appear here? Murong was very puzzled. Just as he was about to ask, he felt a gaze from afar. Murong felt something and looked over. He happened to see the majestic figure that had been standing on the peak rise into the air and fly to the bottom of the sky ascension stairs. This was the heavenly tribulation. Murong understood this in his heart. However, he had never seen the 4 and 9 heavenly tribulation before. So, he stared at the majestic figure without blinking. In a flash, the man had turned into a stream of light. He stepped onto the sky ascension stairs and rushed toward the immortal door at the end of the sky. Boom! Just as the man stepped onto the sky ascension stairs, the endless tribulation clouds in the void rolled fiercely. A bolt of tribulation lightning struck down, trying to kill the man. The man let out an earth-shattering laugh. His body was surrounded by black gas, like a demon god. Boom! The man threw out a punch and hit the tribulation lightning that was slashing down. After an earth-shattering sound, the tribulation lightning was actually dispersed by the fierce man. However, the man did not stop. He turned into a stream of light and rushed toward the immortal door. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The tribulation clouds rolled continuously. Bolts of tribulation lightning struck out wildly, covering the entire sky ascension stairs and bombarding the man. However, the man was unprecedentedly ferocious. Whether it was one bolt of tribulation lightning, dozens of bolts, or hundreds or thousands of bolts, he just punched out. An invincible punch. No matter how ferocious the tribulation lightning was, it was destroyed by his punch. This guy was simply too ferocious. Looking at the fierce man, Murong was not the only one who was dumbfounded. Even the experts outside the Demon Mountain were speechless. When others were undergoing the heavenly tribulation, they would bring all kinds of Dharma treasures and carefully rush up the sky ascension stairs. However, at this moment, he was killing his way up. Those terrifying tribulation lightning were like child's play in front of him, unable to withstand a single blow. The middle-aged man was very fast. In a few breaths, he had rushed to the middle of the sky ascension stairs. However, the heavenly tribulations were getting more and more powerful. The 49 heavenly tribulations. The so-called 49 heavenly tribulations were a total of 36 tribulation lightning. From the first to the last 36 tribulation lightning, each tribulation lightning was more terrifying than the last. Chapter 66. The last level of tribulation lightning was twice as powerful as the one before. It was extremely terrifying. When the man reached the middle of the stairway, half of the 49 heavenly tribulations had already descended. That was the 18th level of tribulation lightning. That was truly a vast and mighty heavenly might, extremely terrifying. The gigantic stairway to heaven was filled with endless tribulation lightning. Just looking at it sent chills down one's spine. Who is this ferocious man? This is just an ordinary tribulation lightning. How could it be so terrifying? Outside the Demon Mountain, countless experts were paying attention to the situation. When they saw how terrifying the tribulation lightning was, all of them grimaced and took in a breath of cold air. What shocked them the most was that the man undergoing the tribulation was simply too ferocious. Such terrifying tribulation lightning was actually unable to harm him in the slightest. Even though it was only the 18th level of tribulation, it was already more terrifying than the last level of the 49 heavenly tribulations for many transformation stage cultivators. How heaven-defying is this guy? Does the heavens want to strike him to death? Many experts were shocked, but at the same time, they were gloating. After all, the Demon Mountain had an expert of unknown origin. He was undoubtedly a huge threat to them. What they hoped for the most was for the ferocious man to be struck to death by the tribulation lightning. That way, they would not be afraid of him in the future. However, it seemed like they were going to be disappointed. At this moment, the endless tribulation lightning continued to strike, making the entire cultivation world look like it was the end of the world. However, the ferocious man was surrounded by demonic aura. He was extremely arrogant as he punched and kicked. The endless tribulation lightning could not do anything to him. A few hundred steps in one step. Under the bombardment of the tribulation lightning, the ferocious man became more and more ferocious. In fact, this apocalyptic tribulation lightning couldn't even slow him down. The 20th level of tribulation, the 25th level, the 30th level, the 35th level. When the 35th level of tribulation lightning struck, the ferocious man rushed to the front of the immortal gate. As long as he crossed the last step, he would be able to touch the huge immortal gate. However, at this moment, the previously vigorous Meng was already panting heavily. Even someone like him couldn't withstand the continuous 35 terrifying tribulations. With one step, the ferocious man finally reached the last step of the stairway to heaven. Boom! The moment he stepped onto the last step, a bolt of tribulation lightning that was several kilometers wide struck down. It struck Meng Nan, causing him to stumble and fall onto the last step. The terrifying power shattered his black armor, revealing his bronze skin. If there was someone nearby at this moment, they would see that Meng Nan's skin was oozing blood, and his incomparably powerful body was cracking. Suddenly, he fell onto the heaven stairway and did not move for a long time. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive. The last level of tribulation lightning was different from the previous levels. There was only one tribulation lightning. However, this tribulation lightning directly knocked the fierce man down. Even the first 35 levels of tribulation lightning couldn't do anything to him. How did the last bolt of tribulation lightning knock him out? Murong Yu's eyelids twitched as he looked at Meng Nan, who was lying on the stairway to heaven. The last level of tribulation lightning is 10 times more powerful than all the previous levels of tribulation lightning. Hichu did not explain further. He only said calmly. Murong Yu jumped up in shock. 10 times more powerful than all 30 levels of tribulation lightning. It was no wonder that Meng Nan had been knocked down so easily. While Murong Yu was shocked, he was also worried, would his tribulation be even more terrifying than Meng Nan's in the future? Even when he was in the foundation establishment stage, he was struck by lightning. Murong Yu had a premonition that his 49 heavenly tribulations would not be easy. However, Meng Nan is very powerful. I'm afraid he won't be struck to death so easily. Calm down, Hichu said calmly. In fact, he was not sure if Meng Nan had died. After all, divine consciousness could not enter the stairway. Hence, he could not see the exact situation inside. However, as long as the person undergoing the tribulation did not die, the heaven stairway would not disappear and the immortal gate would not close. At this moment, many experts outside the Demon Mountain were also staring at the heaven stairway. Their faces were gloomy and no one knew what they were thinking. Suddenly, Meng Nan, who had been knocked down by the tribulation lightning, moved and stood up slowly. Ha ha ha! His thunderous laughter spread far and wide. shaking the heavens and earth. Even the tribulation clouds were suppressed by Mangnan's laughter and began to dissipate slowly. After the 36 levels of tribulation, the tribulation clouds began to dissipate, which meant that the tribulation was over. However, it only meant that the tribulation was over. There was a transformation stage above the tribulation stage. The transformation stage was the highest stage in the cultivation world. As long as one passed the transformation stage, he would become an immortal and ascend to the immortal world. The 49 heavenly tribulations were triggered when one was in the late stage of tribulation and was about to break through to the transformation stage. However, after the 49 heavenly tribulations, one's realm did not directly break through to the transformation stage. There was still the most crucial and important step, opening the immortal gate. When the immortal gate was opened, it meant that one had begun to communicate with the immortal world. Then, the immortal elemental energy of the immortal world would descend from the immortal gate and slowly change the cultivator's physical body and strength. Once the physical body and strength had been completely transformed into the immortal realm, one could ascend to the immortal world. The transformation stage, as the name suggested, was a transformation stage. The transformation time was directly related to the opening of the immortal gate after the 49 heavenly tribulations. Mangnan stood in front of the magnificent immortal gate that was shining with golden light. His expression was arrogant as he looked at the sky with disdain. Black energy swirled around his body, making him look like a demonic god. What is he trying to do? Seeing Mangnan standing in front of the immortal gate without moving for a long time, Murong could not help but ask in confusion. Opening the immortal gate. Murong did not understand. Just as he was about to ask, Mangnan had already started to move. Black energy surrounded his body, and an aura that was as vast as the ocean burst out from his body and rushed to the sky. Mangnan first roared and then punched the immortal gate. Boom! The terrifying energy exploded like a flood, and all of it poured onto the immortal gate. The enormous immortal gate seemed to be unable to withstand his terrifying energy. It trembled slightly and actually opened up a crack. A gentle golden light shone out from the immortal gate and shot onto Mangnan's body. Through the crack, Murong wanted to see the immortal world outside the immortal gate. However, he only saw a golden light and nothing else. This is opening the immortal gate. Murong was stunned as he looked at the immortal gate that had opened up a crack. He did not understand. He really did not know what was the use of opening the immortal gate. Furthermore, was it so easy to open the immortal gate? Mangnan roared again. His aura was like a rainbow, and his fist was like a huge mountain. It carried a monstrous amount of energy as he punched the immortal gate again and again. Boom, boom, boom. Under Mangnan's crazy attacks, the crack on the immortal gate became bigger and bigger. However, Murong realized that every time Mangnan punched, his aura became weaker. It seemed that every time he punched out, his strength would be severely depleted. It seemed like he could not replenish his energy. Mangnan did not know how many punches Mangnan threw. Just as he could not hold on any longer and his energy was depleted, the immortal gate creaked. The immortal gate finally made a creaking sound, and the huge door was blasted open. The enormous immortal gate was half open. One of the doors was completely opened, but the other door remained unmoved. He directly opened a gate. Seeing this scene, the experts of the immortal world outside the Demon Mountain were speechless. The shock in their hearts was like a stormy sea. He actually directly opened a gate. This person's future is limitless. A transformation stage cultivator had a very interesting expression on his face. It was unknown whether he was jealous or envious. That's right. An ordinary cultivator would only be able to create a crack on the immortal gate. This person sighed, "This is a huge blow." Countless experts were so shocked that they wanted to die. The immortal world has probably not seen such a ferocious person for hundreds of thousands of years. The experts all sighed. However, they did not expect that not long after, Another ferocious person would be even more terrifying than Meng Nan. I even opened a gate. I'm not satisfied. At this moment, Meng Nan's unsatisfied howl spread far and wide. It caused the experts who heard his voice to stagger as they gritted their teeth. This bastard is purely trying to shock people. The experts gritted their teeth as they looked at Meng Nan deeply. Then, they all turned into streams of light and left the demon mountain. They returned to where they came from. A golden light was emitted from the immortal gate and enveloped Meng Nan's body. In an instant, Meng Nan recovered his energy and seemed to have grown. With a swoosh, Meng Nan left the immortal gate and flew away from the stairway to heaven. At this moment, the stairway to heaven slowly disappeared. Not long after, the stairway to heaven and the immortal gate disappeared from the world. Without the power of the heavenly tribulation, the demon mountain was once again surrounded by demonic chi. Murong Yu saw Meng Nan appear on the original mountain peak. Then, Meng Nan seemed to look at Murong Yu. Then, Meng Nan's figure flashed and disappeared. Murong Yu felt his hair stand on end. Just now, he had clearly seen that ferocious man grinning at him. Murong Yu was scared out of his wits. Meng Nan had discovered him. There was no doubt about it. However, why was he so disdainful towards those experts outside the Devil Mountain? Why did he only grin at him? In reality, what Murong Yu did not know was that when Meng Nan was going through the heavenly tribulation was something that even the demonic beasts in the transformation stage could not withstand. However, Murong Yu just stood there. The heavenly tribulation did not seem to have any effect on him. How could such a strange thing not attract the attention of others? If not for Murong Yu's weak strength and the fact that everyone was attracted by Meng Nan's heavenly tribulation, they would not have noticed him. Otherwise, the experts in the cultivation world would have discovered him long ago. Chapter 67. However, if other people were to find out that Murong Yu was actually able to resist the heavenly might, it would be a good thing or a bad thing. The other party might not have any ill intentions towards you. Hichu transmitted his voice. With Meng Nan's strength, he would have probably discovered Murong Yu at the first moment. Furthermore, although Murong Yu was able to resist the heavenly might, in Meng Nan's eyes, he was just an ant and did not have any interest in him. Perhaps. Murong Yu sighed and asked in confusion, "What is going on with that immortal gate? Since the immortal gate is opened, does it mean that one can enter the immortal realm?" After the immortal gate was the immortal realm. Murong Yu's understanding was that after entering the immortal gate, one could directly enter the immortal realm. However, he was slightly confused as to why Meng Nan did not enter the immortal realm. Entering the immortal gate at the tribulation passing stage? That is simply courting death. Hichu snorted and said, "After the immortal gate is the immortal realm. However, it is also not the immortal realm, but a teleportation tunnel. Without an immortal level body, one would not be able to withstand the terrifying power of the tunnel and would directly shatter you. In other words, cultivators who are not immortals are unable to pass through the immortal gate and enter the immortal realm." Murong Yu frowned and was even more confused. Isn't it said that only after entering the immortal realm can one enter the immortal gate? Then, even if the cultivators in the mortal realm reach the transformation stage, they are still not immortals. Then how do they enter the immortal gate? This would have to start from the tribulation passing stage. Hichu said slowly, "Tribulation passing stage. After going through the 49 heavenly tribulations, one would have passed the test to the heavens. However, it was only passing the test. If one was unable to open the immortal gate, one would not have the qualifications to appear. As long as one opened the immortal gate, one would have the qualifications to appear. If there were no accidents after opening the immortal gate, one would definitely become an immortal. It was a certainty, not a possibility. Of course, the time it took to appear also determined the size of the immortal gate. This was because of the immortal gate. In reality, cultivators in the immortal realm had two chances to open the immortal gate. One was to pass the 49 heavenly tribulations, open the gate of immortality and obtain the qualifications to become an immortal. The first time the immortal gate was opened, in addition to obtaining the qualifications to become an immortal, the immortal plane's immortal elemental energy could also flow out through the immortal gate to descend upon the cultivator undergoing the tribulation, tempering their fleshly body and transforming their power from true essence to immortal elemental energy. The reason why there was a difference in the time taken to become an immortal was because of the size of the immortal gate. The bigger the immortal gate, the more immortal elemental energy it would release. Then, the transformation of the body and power of the person undergoing the tribulation would be even faster. And vice versa. Generally speaking, ordinary cultivators who had undergone the 4 and 9 heavenly tribulation would only be able to open a very small crack in the gate of immortality. Celestial origin energy slowly flowed out like a small stream. If such a cultivator wanted to completely transform his physical body and energy, he would need at least several thousand years, or even several tens of thousands of years. For a cultivator like Meng Nan, who had blasted open half of the immortal gate, in a few hundred years, or even a few decades, he would be able to complete the transformation of his physical body and strength, and then ascend. And when the cultivator's physical body and strength had completely transformed into that of an immortal, the stairway to heaven and the immortal gate would appear again, leading the cultivator to ascend to the immortal plane and become an immortal in broad daylight. So that's how it is. Moroni nodded. Once the immortal gate was opened, the cultivator undergoing the tribulation would enter the transformation period. The so-called transformation period was equivalent to a half-immortal. As the transformation of his physical body and strength increased, his strength would become stronger, and he would eventually become an immortal of the land. In other words, there are immortals in the cultivation world. Moroni was startled, and then asked, "There is no need to doubt this. However, from what I saw just now, his strength was very strong, and even an ordinary immortal would not be his match." "Is he really that strong?" Moroni was still doubtful. "You also saw the tribulation lightning just now. If it was an ordinary person, he would have been struck to death by the first few waves of tribulation lightning. But this guy did not use anything and directly rushed to the front of the immortal gate. Maybe the armor on his body is a spirit tool. One must know that in the 108,000 cultivation worlds, most of the tribulation-passing cultivators were struck to death on the heaven ascension stairs." Moroni was startled and asked in confusion, 108,000 cultivation worlds? There are actually so many? In the universe, there are 108,000 cultivation worlds and 3,000 immortal worlds. Moroni was shocked, but he also learned a lot of information. Moreover, this information was probably not known by anyone in the cultivation world. After all, Zhao Yun also cultivated to the ultimate supreme realm with the body of a mortal. But it was obvious that the cultivation world that Zhao Yun was in was not the current cultivation world. Moroni directly sat down cross-legged. Today, not only did he see Meng Nan's tribulation, he also learned a lot of knowledge, and he needed time to digest it. After a long time, Moroni stood up, but at this moment his face slightly changed. Previously, because of Meng Nan's tribulation, the supreme heavenly might forced many demonic beasts away, and they went into hibernation. Now that the heavenly tribulation had dispersed, these demonic beasts had all returned to their positions. Waves of ferocious aura faintly came from all directions, and it was extremely terrifying. Moroni's face slightly changed, and he just remembered that he was in the depths of the Demon Mountain. Even the experts of the cultivation world did not dare to enter this place. "Hichu, let's quickly leave this place." Moroni's heart moved, and his body flashed, and he flew out of the Demon Mountain. Roar! A loud roar came, and the forest shook, and the leaves of the trees rustled. A wave of ferocious aura swept over, and Moroni was sent flying. Puff! Immediately, Moroni spat out a mouthful of blood, and his mind was injured. Although this wave of ferocious aura was far from the heavenly tribulation, the reason why Murong-yu was able to resist the heavenly tribulation was because of Hichu. However, Hichu was unable to block out the ferocious aura of the demonic beasts, unless Murong-yu entered the Hichu Luoshu world. However, unless it was a matter of life and death, Murong-yu would not enter the Hichu Luoshu world. After all, although the Hichu Luoshu world was powerful, it was still an external object, and he could not rely too much on these external objects. Otherwise, it would only bring him harm and not benefit. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Murong-yu did not dare to fly in the depths of the Demon Mountain, and he could only move his body in the forest, turning into a ray of light, and quickly flew out of the Demon Mountain. Roar! Suddenly, a loud roar came from afar. It shook the heavens and the earth, causing all the demonic beasts to kneel on the ground, and the entire earth seemed to be trembling. A wave of ferocious aura swept through the depths of the Demon Mountain like a vast ocean. At this moment, a pitch-black hand suddenly stretched out from the depths of the Demon Mountain, tearing through space and time, and directly grabbing at Murong-yu. Feeling the terrifying aura that was like a stormy sea, Murong-yu's face instantly turned pale. That aura was too powerful, too terrifying. The pressure came, and before the big hand could grab him, the terrifying aura had already suppressed Murong-yu to the point that his body was about to shatter, and even his soul felt like it was about to shatter. There was no way to resist, and Murong-yu did not even have the thought of resisting in his heart. After all, the opponent was much, much stronger than him. It was like an ant against an elephant. How could he resist? An expert at the crossing calamity stage. While Murong-yu's face was pale, Hichu's voice was low and murderous. At this moment, Hichu was very angry. There was actually an expert at the crossing calamity stage who attacked Murong-yu. If he was at his peak, a cold snort could kill an expert at the crossing calamity stage. However, he was now crippled, and his strength was less than a billionth of his peak. He was no match for an expert at the crossing calamity stage. Murong-yu, hurry up and come in. At this moment, Hichu did not care if Hichu's secret was exposed. First, he had to protect Murong-yu's life. Otherwise, if Murong-yu was dead, what was the use of keeping Hichu's secret? Murong-yu gritted his teeth and remembered this aura. He swore that after he became stronger, he would definitely kill this person. With a thought, he was about to enter the Hichu Luoshu world. At this moment, a cold snort came from the depths of the Demon Mountain, followed by a cold voice. How dare you go against my words and attack him? Are you courting death? Bang! The moment the cold snort was heard, the pitch-black hand in the void that was grabbing towards Murong-yu suddenly exploded. Then, a dull snort came from afar. It seemed that the demonic beast that attacked was injured. Murong-yu was stunned. Although he did not know what was going on, he knew that he was saved. Leave the Demon Mountain quickly. I have already restricted those above the form synthesis stage from attacking. You should leave the Demon Mountain as soon as possible. Just as Murong-yu was hesitating, a voice sounded in his ears. Huh? Murong-yu was shocked. The first thing he thought of was the fierce man who was going through the crossing calamity. He thought of the scene where the fierce man grinned at him before he disappeared. Could it be that the fierce man secretly protected me? Murong-yu was shocked. His body turned into a ray of light and flew into the distance. After all, the other party only restricted those above the form synthesis stage from attacking. However, there were still a few strong cultivators below the form synthesis stage. Those are not people that he could fight against. Murong-yu, it must be because you were not afraid of the heavenly lightning that attracted the demonic beast's attention. Hichu said in a low voice. Demonic beasts were different from human cultivators, although the cultivation of both was against the heavens. However, the cultivation of demonic beasts was much more difficult than that of human cultivators. Even the heavenly tribulation was much more terrifying than that of humans. Moreover, demonic beasts did not know how to refine pills or forge weapons. The way they collected pills and magic treasures was through robbing. It was obvious that Murong Yu was not afraid of the heavenly lightning and was only in the foundation establishment stage. It was obvious that he had a magic treasure of the highest quality. He actually had a magic treasure that was not afraid of the heavenly lightning. Even experts in the transformation stage were envious. Therefore, when the fierce man finished his crossing calamity, the demonic beasts immediately targeted Murong Yu. However, when these experts were about to attack, they were warned by the fierce man. He also restricted those above the form synthesis stage from attacking. Chapter 68. However, the demonic beasts above the body integration stage could not attack, but those below the body integration stage could. Therefore, countless demonic beasts began to order their subordinates to attack. Powerful demonic beasts constantly appeared in the depths of the Demon Mountain, intimidating the Demon Mountain and causing Murong Yu's expression to constantly change. Spirit severing stage, out-of-body stage, all kinds of powerful demonic beasts constantly appeared, causing Murong Yu to hide and suffer. This was only in the depths of the Demon Mountain because there were not many demonic beasts. Otherwise, if all the demonic beasts appeared, there would be no chance for Murong Yu to hide. In the outermost area of the Demon Mountain, for some unknown reason, the demonic beasts here began to riot after the fierce man's tribulation. Powerful demonic beasts constantly rushed out from the depths of the Demon Mountain. In a short time, the disciples of the major sects who were only at the foundation establishment stage suffered heavy casualties. Even the revolving reflection stage demonic beasts were enough to make these foundation establishment stage disciples suffer. Not to mention, there were more and more demonic beasts that were not only at the revolving reflection stage. Fusion stage, heartbeat stage, silent spirit stage. Countless demonic beasts came out of the Demon Mountain and swept everything. No one knew what they were going to do. When the elders of the major sects discovered this scene, their expressions suddenly changed, and they immediately began to gather their disciples. For some unknown reason, the demonic beasts were rioting. It was no longer suitable for training. Tyrannical divine senses constantly swept past. Murong Yu hid in a cave, holding his breath and not daring to breathe. If this goes on, you will be discovered by them sooner or later. It's better to enter the Hichu Luo Shu. Hichu said in a deep voice. Murong Yu shook his head, his face showing a firm expression. Entering the Hichu Luo Shu may allow me to hide for a while, but can I hide for a lifetime? What if one day I lose the Hichu Luo Shu? Moreover, as a cultivator, the pursuit of power and immortality is my ultimate goal. I will definitely not hide from cultivation. Although there are many dangers now, it is the best opportunity to gain experience. If I can escape from the hands of many powerful demonic beasts, then it will be the beginning of my success. The path to becoming an expert was one that would tread on the corpses of countless experts, and these blue-ranked demonic beasts on my stepping stones. At this point, Murong Yu's body revealed a feeling of disdain for the world. He really had the aura of a monarch descending upon the world. However, you're only a foundation establishment stage cultivator after all. You don't have the ability to fight against this. Fine, I will teach you a breath concealing technique. While speaking, Hichu directly pulled Murong Yu into the Hichu Luo Shu world. Breath concealment technique. Ordinary breath concealment techniques could conceal one's cultivation level and aura. However, these breath concealment techniques were generally not strong enough. As long as the opponent's strength was higher than his by a certain realm, he would be discovered. However, the breath restraining technique that Hichu passed on to Murong Yu was much more powerful than the average breath restraining technique. This was the aura concealing technique created by war god Zhao Yun. When cultivated to the extreme, no one in the world would be able to see through it. In a day's time, Murong Yu successfully cultivated this technique. One day's time was only about 4 hours in the outside world. With a flash, Murong left the Hichu world and appeared in the cave. He released his divine telekinesis to check his surroundings. Then, he carefully turned into a ray of light and disappeared from the cave. Due to his weak strength, even if he successfully cultivated the breath concealment technique, he would still be discovered by powerful demonic beasts. Therefore, he could only carefully move forward in the forest. His speed was so slow that it made one's hair stand on end. According to this speed, it would take him a few years to leave the Demon Mountain. In the blink of an eye, 5 days had passed. After using a total of 5 days, Murong was already struggling in the Demon Mountain. Fortunately, over the past few days, those powerful divine senses had disappeared. However, there were many demonic beasts walking around nearby. Boom! Murong sent a demonic beast flying with a swing of his spear. With a flash of his body, he charged forward and stabbed the demonic beast to death. After killing the demonic beast, Murong didn't stop to rest as he flew forward. Murong, I feel that something is wrong. Why are there more and more low-level demonic beasts in the depths of the Demon Mountain? Hichu said. Murong nodded. He was also puzzled. According to his understanding, there were only powerful demonic beasts in the depths of the Demon Mountain. However, in these few days, even Foundation Establishment demonic beasts had appeared. In 3 to 4 days, Murong had killed countless demonic beasts. Moreover, as the number of demonic beasts increased, the probability of Murong being discovered increased. Almost as soon as Murong left, a few demonic beasts rushed over. There were Foundation Establishment, Revolving Reflection, and Fusion Stage demonic beasts. These demonic beasts only looked at the scene of the battle. Then, they spread their bodies and chased after Murong. In the depths of the Demon Mountain, on a mountain peak called the Sacred Mountain, in the main hall, a middle-aged man with demonic chi lingering around his body was sitting on the main seat in an imposing manner. On both sides of the main hall, there were experts of different shapes and sizes, but they were all emitting powerful auras. There were more than 100 cultivators in the tribulation stage, combination stage, and various stages. However, under the suppression of the middle-aged man, these hundreds of people did not even dare to breathe loudly. The entire main hall was extremely quiet. If Murong was here, he would know that the middle-aged man sitting on the main seat was the fierce man who went through the tribulation stage not long ago. For this person to be able to sit on the main seat in the main hall, could he be the king of the Demon Mountain? However, if he was the king of the Demon Mountain, then he was only in the tribulation stage. How could those transformation stage demonic beasts allow him to rule here? In fact, since the fierce man was sitting on the main seat, his identity was already clear. The fierce man's cold gaze swept across the powerful demonic beasts in the main hall. Each of the demonic beasts had already transformed, and their bodies emitted a fierce aura. The hundreds of combination stage and tribulation stage demonic beasts were not all of the powerful demonic beasts in the Demon Mountain. It was not that the fierce man's charisma was not enough. It was just that the forces in the Demon Mountain were too complicated. Moreover, he only needed to gather these people. I admire that human cultivator. The fierce man glanced at these people and said indifferently. Everyone's expression changed, and they looked at the fierce man with unsightly expressions. I know that all of you are coveting that cultivator's treasures. However, I warn you, if any of you dare to snatch it, don't blame me for killing you. His voice was calm, but the boundless killing intent in it caused the powerful demonic beasts to feel a chill in their hearts. Others might not know the identity of this fellow. However, they knew. Not only was this fellow's cultivation high, his talent was heaven-defying, and he was vicious. From a small demonic beast to his current position, countless demonic beasts had died in his hands. Among them, there was no lack of transformation stage cultivators. Everyone present did not doubt that if they really dared to make a move, this guy would definitely make a move at the first moment and kill them. Seeing everyone's expression change, the fierce man laughed coldly in his heart and continued. Of course, you can also snatch it. However, those of the spirit tranquil stage and above are not allowed to do so. If I find out, I will kill all of you." Everyone's expression changed again, but they let out a sigh of relief in their hearts. That human cultivator was only a foundation establishment stage cultivator. Those of the spirit tranquil stage and above are not allowed to make a move. Then they would send out revolving reflection stage, fusion stage, and heartbeat stage demonic beasts to snatch it. Even if that human cultivator was strong enough to kill revolving reflection stage demonic beasts, then fusion stage and heartbeat stage demonic beasts would definitely kill him. It was because of this reason that in the following days, Muronyu encountered more and more low-level demonic beasts. Otherwise, once those strong demonic beasts attacked, Muronyu could only hide in the Hichu Luoshu world. Muronyu, who was on the run, had no idea that this was all thanks to the help of that fierce man. However, if Muronyu were to find out that Mangnan had helped him, he'd definitely be shocked. After all, no one would help you for no reason. Moreover, both parties did not know each other. One who is unaccountably solicitous is hiding evil intentions. If Muronyu were to find out about this, he'd definitely remember this saying. Rumble. Suddenly, a loud sound came from the front. At the same time, countless tall trees in the forest were torn apart. Then a huge black ape rushed out from the front and stretched out its hairy big hand. It carried a terrifying aura and fiercely slapped down on Murongyu's head. Murongyu's eyes narrowed slightly. Black true essence flickered on his body and lingered around him. With a low roar, his whole body soared into the air. He held the spear with both hands and stabbed towards the huge black ape's palm. Late revolving reflection, stage demonic beast. Hichu reminded. Boom! At the same time that Hichu spoke, the two had already collided. The power of 20 Panyu spiraled above Murongyu's head, bearing fangs and brandishing claws. It was very powerful. A ferocious force erupted and swept out in all directions. In the surrounding hundreds of meters, countless huge trees and boulders were crushed under the impact of this terrifying power. Murongyu and the huge black ape were fiercely sent flying by the terrifying power. In the past few days, Murongyu almost never stopped fighting with demonic beasts. Although his realm did not break through because of this, he still only had the power of Panyu. However, the power of the 20 Panyu above his head became more and more condensed, almost to the point of materialization. Moreover, during this time, Murongyu was dozens of times stronger than before he entered the Demon Mountain, even hundreds of times stronger in terms of fighting experience and using power. Cultivators in the revolving reflection stage only had the power of 20 Panyu, at most no more than 30 Panyu. The huge black ape in front of him was powerful, but it definitely did not have the power of 29 Panyu. After the collision, Murongyu was directly sent flying. In the first confrontation, Murongyu was at a disadvantage. He estimated that the power of this huge black ape should be around 25 to 26 Panyu. Compared to Murongyu, he had 5 more strands of coiling sea energy. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.